Would the breakdown of
my
the
customers,
request
I
be
know.
on?
Ways and Means Committee, this is Wednesday, June 15th at 7 o'clock. If we could rise, Larry Inman has a moment of silence for us.
We now can have a moment of silence for the tragic loss of Carly Lewis from our community, and then our private thoughts and prayers to the family for her mother, Susie Lewis, her father, Todd Lewis, and her brother, Mitchell Lewis. Let's have a moment of silence for the shock and the grieving of the family and friends as they're joining at the downtown area this evening. So we'll have a moment of silence, please. Thank you.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Next is roll call, please.
Commissioner Wheelock?
Yes, ma'am.
Thomas?
Yep.
Richardson?
Here.
Max Bauer? Here. Inman?
Here.
Henschel?
Here, ma'am.
Gilman?
Here.
Limcool?
Here.
And Commissioner Fleece is excused.
Thank you. Next is the approval of minutes of May 18th.
So moved.
Support.
Thomas and Wheelock. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Next on the agenda is the first public comment. If you want to read the rules, please.
Any person shall be permitted to address a meeting of the Board of Commissioners which is required to be open to the public under the provision of the Michigan Open Meetings Act as amended. Public comment shall be carried out in accordance with the following board rules and procedures. Any person wishing to address the board shall state his or her name and address. No person shall be allowed to speak more than once on the same matter, excluding time needed to answer commissioners' questions. The chairperson shall control the amount of time each person shall be allowed to speak, which shall not exceed 3 minutes. Chairperson may, at his or her discretion, extend the amount of time any person is allowed to speak.
Is there anybody in the public that would like to make comment at this time? Yep.
Donald Barrows, 10351 High Meadows Court, that's Elmwood Township, Leelanau County. Under Department Action Items tonight, under C, TC Talus presentation, I just want to make a couple comments. Leelanau County did not endorse TC Talus or Grand Visions. The original $1.6 million, and I believe it was federal state, there was never a real true accounting, so before you give any more money to them, I would hope that you get at least a true and accurate and legal accounting of how they spent the $1.6 million. I don't know what you're going to find when the grant that they got from Kellogg Foundation, but I don't think there's ever been a true and accurate documentation of how they spent that money. So I'd hope that until you get that, you'd withhold any more money going to this same group. I did make the mention that Leelanau County commissioners did not endorse Grand Visions, and Elmwood Township, under the group, or under the leadership of the old group called Elmwood Citizens for Sensible Growth, not unlike the group that's over in Acme Township that fought Myers, did give them some money, but then we found out that no matter what money we gave at Elmwood Township, we have no benefit coming from it. And so I'd hope that when it comes time to fund them, think twice about spending your money that's in shortfall, I guess they call it around here. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Don. Anybody else like to make public comment? Seeing none, next is there any special orders of business?
Sure.
Okay, is there any,
Approval of the agenda.
I was going to ask, is there anything to add to the agenda before we approve it?
Okay, yes.
Okay?
I would like to replace the memo that's in the packet, original packet, that was subject matter 2012 budget process with the memo you have on your desk. And I would also like to add, just for informational purposes only, the comparison between the 2008 and 2011 budget. And that's solely just to demonstrate that how the numbers have been allocated, within a 4-year period. And really to justify the number one priority of the board for the past 4 to 5 years, and that is public safety. And those numbers really truly reflect in some form that, that we really did do that, we devoted our extra revenues towards the various areas of public safety, including Sheriff's Department and courts and those kinds of things. So, it was just a confirmation that, what the direction was of the board for the last 4 or 5 years and how we allocated that money. So it's just information only.
Is there anything else? Dennis, do you have anything to add?
No, sir.
Okay. Now, a motion to approve the agenda?
Moved as amended.
And do I have support? By Gilman. Thank you. Next is the action on the consent. Oh, excuse me. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Next is the action on the consent calendar. You want to read that, please?
The purpose of the consent calendar is to expedite business by grouping non-controversial items together to be dealt with by one commission motion without discussion. Any member of the commission, staff, or the public may ask that any item on the consent calendar be removed therefrom and placed elsewhere on the agenda for full discussion. Such requests will be automatically respected. If any item is not removed from the consent calendar, the action noted, receive and file, or approval, is approved by a single committee action adopting the consent calendar. A, receive and file. Number 1, Parks and Recreation Fund appropriation. B, approval. Number 1, appropriation request, Soil Conservation District. 2, 2010-2011 Marine Safety Grant and Equipment Grant. 3, Sheriff's Office Storage Building change orders. 4, Edward Byrne Memorial Justice Assistant Grant Program.
Is there any item that the commission would like to have pulled off the consent agenda? Dennis?
Well, I have one thing. I've talked with the sheriff, and under approved items number 2, the first part, which is the first 2 paragraphs for the Marine Safety Grant, are okay. But there are some errors in the equipment part that's in the 3rd section. So the sheriff has requested that we remove the equipment part, and he will bring another letter back at the board meeting in 2 weeks.
Okay. So do we want to remove that from the agenda, or just remove it and just with that, delete that?
Whatever you're more comfortable
I'm
with.
fine with that explanation.
Is there any item for the audience would like to have pulled from the agenda? Okay, a motion to approve?
Move for approval.
With Thomas?
Vacation.
Ross Richardson? I have you down as supporting it.
On this item B2, are we voting on it, or are we just pulling it off the agenda, pulling it off and bringing it back next time?
Changing it with that.
We're going to leave it on and leave the paragraph out.
Take a portion.
So we're just removing the 3rd paragraph?
Yeah.
Correct.
Okay. Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's carried.
Roll call vote.
Oh, roll call?
Roll call vote.
Pick me.
I'm sorry. I wasn't ready.
It's all practice, Herb.
You bet.
I told him Bonnie and I were both going to slap him together.
That's fine. I take direction well. I'm married.
Commissioner Thomas?
Yes.
Richardson?
Yes.
Max Bauer?
Yes.
Inman?
Yes.
Henschel?
Yes.
Gilman?
Yes.
Wheelock?
Yes, ma'am.
Lemko?
Yes. Okay. Next is department action items, IT document imaging scanner maintenance renewal. Don, you here for that?
I am here.
Good.
No, actually,
Hi,
it's
good evening, Don Sheehan, Director of IT. We went out for bid for scanner maintenance, and we've had these on a maintenance policy just because of the need for a lot of the departments. It has to be there, they're going paperless, but at the same time, we were looking at the costs, and we did go out, and we had a couple other bidders come in this time who are resellers of maintenance services. And as we went through the process, we ended up finding another firm in Traverse City who can perform maintenance on the scanners. And so basically, my recommendation then is to not actually go with any of the bidders and just to take them off of a contract. We do have a spare scanner that we can make available if we need to for a department, if it does take a while for one to be repaired. And we would just pay on a time and materials basis to have the scanners repaired. So that's the recommendation.
So your recommendation is not to renew?
Is
To renew the current maintenance contract.
Not to
Correct.
renew the current?
It would be not to renew a contract, but to authorize us to pay for scanner repairs on a time and materials
Okay.
basis.
Just wanted to make sure we know what the motion needs to be.
And this is from a local firm, the repairs are coming from a local firm?
It is Great Lakes Business Systems.
Okay? Do I have a motion?
So
I'll make
moved.
the motion.
Richardson and Thomas. Any other discussion?
I had a question.
Could you restate the motion? I don't like so moved.
Yeah, well, I think,
The motion was to recommend not to renew the contract and to authorize that they pay for repairs on a,
Time and materials basis, and the firm would be GLBSI.
My only issue with the motion is, would this allow, if that company wasn't working out, either their costs went out of sight or they stopped being in business, would that allow you to go to some other firm to get the service? Or do we have to come back to the board again just to
Actually-
change that little
Right,
thing?
and actually, as part of the recommendation, I did have it, or another qualified non-contract
Okay.
provider.
Okay, is that part of the motion?
I apologize, I should have read the recommendation.
it's in there.
It's much
in
clearer
your
than.
vote.
Do we have a contract now?
Yes, we do.
And how much is that contract for?
$11,000.
Okay, and how much, does that cover all necessary work?
Yes, it includes
Okay.
any travel time. But yeah, the firm that is currently doing it, I mean, actually, it was CDWG had the contract the last time, but even they kind of like subcontracted to Access Services, who I believe comes out of Holland. So
Okay.
they're not close when they come.
So how many service calls did we have?
I believe we've had 3 in the last couple of years.
Okay, so at $11,000, they were making out pretty good then?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Any other discussion? All those in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion's carried.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tom.
Next is Peggy. You're up on the Register of Deeds tract books.
Peggy Haynes, Register of Deeds, and I'm here tonight to, back probably 3 years ago, Grand Traverse Title, who had been in business for many, many years, went out of business and sold their records to, they were an abstract office and they kept track records of all our documents. They sold their records to Great Lakes Title Plant, who has had them probably 2 or 3 years, and now she is going to retire. She had worked for them at one time. Also, it's my understanding that when Grand Traverse Title was established back in the 40s or something, they purchased some of these books from Grand Traverse County, so they were our records at one time, part of them. Well, I had gotten a call probably about a month ago that there was an ad in a title magazine and saying that the Grand Traverse County and Leelanau County tract books were for sale. So basically, they're kind of up for grabs for anybody that wants them. I would think I would rather purchase them for the county out of my technology fund rather than have these records fall into the wrong hands. Maybe a company overseas or something that would be, I mean, whoever purchased them could generate income from using them. It's kind of hard to explain what a tract book is unless you've done any research with them ever. But Antrim County, for example, has track books there. They do abstracts. They charge $60 an hour. I believe Kalkaska charges $70 or even more than that an hour for the examiners to use the books. A normal title search that might take you several hours, by using the track books, you could come in and get it done in a half an hour. So to researchers, it's beneficial to use the track books, so they do not have a problem paying for it. I did include some information as to the amount of money that Antrim County generated the last few years using the books, or renting out the track books. And I think in a matter of, it's hard to guess, but 3-4 years at the most, they could pay for themselves. And I'm proposing that I purchase them out of the technology money, reimburse the money to the technology fund, and after that, anything we generate would go back into the county. Any questions as to the purpose of the track books?
I would
or-
move to approve the purchase of the track books out of the technology fund of the Register of Deeds in the amount of up to $60,000.
Support by Thomas. Any questions?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Jason.
As far as recouping the costs, does that fall within a customary charge type of schedule for us? I mean, as far as would we find ourselves in the unfortunate position of having to deliver some of these services, or the ability to do this for free, or is
No.
this? Okay,
No, my records are available. They can search in grantor grantee if they want in the office.
But the use of the,
Whereas a track book is more, I can think of many times Dean's come down or sent somebody from his office to research county documents. Whereas a track record will list everything. If we had the legal description, it will list every easement, everything, instead of the difficulty we have sometimes
By-
finding something that the county had purchased at one
By
time.
property, wouldn't it, Peg? It's by
Yeah.
property.
and have you made contact with these folks yet at all?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, she has given me, I put it in here, her quote to me.
Which is-
She's offering them for $60,000.
So she knows
the
what they're
Grand
worth.
Traverse, but I'm thinking of offering 50 and seeing,
I'm confident she'll get it for less.
they're only worth,
To certain people.
there's not a huge
Right,
market.
right.
She's kind of backed up against the wall as far as she could sit on them for a long time waiting for a buyer to come, or I just would not want them to fall in somebody else's hands.
Thank you.
Rob?
Having used your department, I will say, a couple of years back, I was in her vault researching, and then I struck up a conversation with one of the attorneys doing work, and he told me he makes between $200 and $400 an hour doing this stuff, and I can certainly see that it makes sense. They would gladly pay $60 an hour if it saves them an hour or two. But my question, I was wondering if you could tell us about the technology fund a little bit. You spoke to me briefly about it in the past, but just maybe for the public and anyone that isn't familiar with that fund.
I can't think of how many years now it's been in existence,
Probably
quite a few.
7, yeah.
And there was a sunset on it at one time there is no sunset at this current time. $5 from each document that's recorded in our office goes into a technology fund. This was established through the state several years back to help upgrade our offices. And the money is supposed to be used for technology, computers, anything to. And these may be old records, but I do feel it's an upgrade in technology for examiners as far as we
The
don't
book is
have them now,
technology.
and they would like them.
So, go ahead, Dennis.
I had 2 questions, Peg, that I didn't think of when we talked the first time. The first one is, how much time will it take your staff to keep the book up to speed?
We won't be doing anything further on them. These will be all the old records we will not be maintaining
Okay.
because the current computer systems generate a track.
Okay.
By the way we index. So they'll just basically stay the way they are.
Okay, great. And I just wanted to comment, we had a tract index in the Register of Deeds office in Marquette County, and it was a big moneymaker. It really was. It saved lots and lots of time.
It may take
so-
a while for people to get used to the fact
Yeah.
that we have them.
But it's definitely a good idea. I think Peg came up with a great idea to get this if we can.
Sonny?
Yeah, I think you're right. If it's county records, they should be owned by the county. The only thing that I did note, if I understand this correct, this is just transactions from the 1850s to the 1920s.
No, actually, they've been kept current through like the last year or so.
Oh, okay, because when I read it, it says they're all in longhand up through the 1920s, and that's why I
Yeah,
was...
the early books, they actually go up through 2004, if you read where she's got the track books for sale.
Okay, yeah,
there's
well, actually, it says
different-
2006.
Okay, she might have,
Okay.
I'm reading her, oh, that's Leelanau County. I was
Okay, that's
looking at
fine.
the top one, okay, yeah, 2006.
And obviously, because we publicly said we'd spend up to $60,000, I don't anticipate we're going to get a sale.
Never know.
Unless she's watching.
Chris?
I may look in my technology fund and there's only so much in there. I don't know yet, I haven't looked.
Peggy, I happened to go up to Martinex, and they've got a Grand Traverse County Records book in a display case in their showroom, and I just wanted to let you know that.
Is it a records book?
It
or is
said
it
Grand
one of
Traverse
the
County
old-
Records. It's a great big book like I've seen in your office, and I'm just mentioning it so if you happen to go up there and take a look at it.
It's part of the reason we took the wall down a few years back, because you never knew who came in and out of the office.
And they're so easy
You
to
know, it would
hide.
have been.
Yeah, it's a big
But they
book.
could go right
It's
out the
big.
front door.
But,
Easy
you
to
know,
hide.
you ought to go up there, and I'm sure they'd be happy to show it to you.
Yeah, I would.
The only other question I have is, in parentheses in this recommendation, I didn't hear it stated in the motion, but it says that the fees collected from the usage would be paid back to the technology fund. Is there a reason? Do you do that every time you use the technology fund?
No, but I will check into it further. I just don't want to, it's kind of a gray area, like I said, as far as technology. I will talk more to my association. If they feel that it's kind of a misuse of funds, not directly.
Really?
If, I'm just questioning, if they
Yeah.
did,
I
if they
her-
think it's fine, then, I don't have an issue just putting it into general
I'd rather see
funds.
the fund, go back into the general fund or whatever fund it would normally go into.
So then, Peg, if you're okay with that, it sounded like you were, what we'll do is we'll check, and if it looks like it legally, can be used out of there, then the revenue will come back into the general
Yeah.
fund. If it doesn't, we'll make a loan out of there to buy it and then pay it back with the revenue.
That's fine.
Sound okay? Sound okay?
Yeah, I don't.
Any
have an
other
issue.
questions? All those in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's carried.
Thanks, Peg.
Thank you.
Okay, Peggy, thank you very much. Next is TC Talus presentation. Matt, and,
Now Matt's going to stay behind and guard
Okay.
my back.
okay. Introduce yourself, Evan.
I'm Evan Smith. I am the chair of TC Talus. I serve in that position by virtue of being the chair of the Traverse City Chamber of Commerce Transportation Committee.
Oh, I see the connection.
You have, I think in your packet, a history of TC Talus going back to about 1989. I think also today you should have received a letter from the Traverse City Chamber of Commerce. And also, there's a recommendation from Commissioner Richardson in your packet. And I just wanted to take a minute of your time and point out that TC Talus is the only place that I am aware of in our community where the broad-based community people involved in planning get together and talk about what they're doing. And when we look at some of the work that's been done there with traffic studies in places like Acme, Elmwood, East Bay Township, Garfield, and Blair, we've got all these different groups sitting at the table having discussions. And more what we're hearing from MDOT and from the federal agency in highways is that regional planning and agencies that are cooperative are going to be the ones that are going to get the money in the future. So I think it's important to keep in mind that while we might not have done a good job letting everyone know what we're doing and what we've accomplished, the fact of the matter is it's one of the few places where everyone is sitting down and actually collaborating. And I think that's a really important thing to keep in mind. And I urge you to support us throughout the end of this year. We are in the process of re-examining our formation, our role, and what we're going to do in the future. And I think that's only a valid concern and a valid approach to who we are and what we are. I don't think it's the time to rest on laurels, but I think it's time to move forward, and that's what we're doing. And so I urge you to continue to support us as we go down this road. The townships are all at the table. We've got MDOT, we've got the County Road Commission, we've got a number of people there that are participating. Half of our budget, for goodness sakes, comes from MDOT. They believe in what we're doing. So with that, the only other thing I'd like to add is we have never received a grant from the Kellogg Foundation. Questions?
Rob?
The recommended allocation here, $16,875, what do we get for that?
You get the services provided by TC Talus, which, for example, historically, just for example, from 2003 to 2005, Matt Skeels performed the services of county planning in the absence of the county planner. So, for example, during that period, all the planning done for Grand Traverse County was done by TC Talus. What you get moment to moment, I can't give you, here's exactly what you get right now, but what you get is a collaborative approach and a planning process that gives everyone the message, the information, the data to allow the collaboration across the counties so that things don't end at the township line, so that things don't end at the city border.
Okay, I guess what I don't understand is, and it's a great thing, the townships coming together, the county coming together and talking about the planning. Why does it cost so much for them to come sit around a table? We got rooms here, come sit.
Okay, well, for example, we've done corridor analysis reports. We've done the statewide transportation planning directors conference was put on here regionally. We've got traffic analysis for various projects. So there is planning and there is data that goes back to the townships.
Doesn't the county do the traffic studies and things like that?
Not all of them, no.
Which ones do they do, which ones don't they do?
Typically, the road commission.
Matt,
Could you come up here? Sorry. I'm a volunteer position. This is the technical side. You're going way over my head, Rob.
Thanks. Matt Skeels, the director of TC Talus. Typically, the road commission counts on the county road system. TC Talus, for as long as TC Talus has been around, we have augmented the county road commission counts, and we count the same locations at every year, year in and year out. The road commission will typically count in advance of a project to get an idea of the traffic mix on a given roadway to help them design the pavements and whatnot. So they don't necessarily count the same roads every year. But also the Department of Transportation counts, and there are the city counts. And what I do is compile all those counts into one location.
Chris?
I heard you speak about the townships coming together. It says here that 7 surrounding townships are contributing members, not all of them? And are all the townships seated at the table?
Yes, all the townships, not the original, it was Traverse City and 9 surrounding townships. Blair and Green Lake have since dropped off. And the original definition of TC Talus, I guess, came from the Department of Transportation, and it's the rules for metropolitan planning organizations require the urban area, which is a census-defined area. You have to have the central city and at least 75% of the governments that are inside the, that urban boundary. So we have, with the exception of Blair, we have all of the units that are inside of our urban boundary represented at the Talos table.
Can I have a motion?
Seeing as though I was on the original Talus way back when I was from Green Lake, I'll make the motion.
Okay,
Second.
Support.
Second to approve
By
the appropriation
Larry
as presented.
Okay, any other discussion?
Point of order, this appropriation has already been voted on. I believe it would take a two-thirds vote to suspend the rules.
No, I have an answer to that.
It was a tie vote.
Consultation with Bob Cooney, the rules are, the current meeting, you would need a motion to reconsider. The following month, you would need a motion to reconsider. But the following month after that, and it was at the April Ways and Means meeting, it would be clear for a new motion and a new support without a motion to reconsider.
Okay. So with that understanding, like the budgeting for outcomes thing could just come back every other
Correct.
month?
No, it could come back
Every other month.
Every other month.
Has to be 60 days.
Yep, 60 days, yeah.
Okay. Jason?
I'm going to, because sometimes I just try to keep my, my thoughts straightforward so that it can be understood. A lot of folks don't understand TC Talos. They don't understand the grand vision, which is the child of TC Talos. I just have a few comments that I'd like to at least get out there. As far as I'm concerned, I don't think that the Traverse City Transportation and Land Use Study is something that probably should have it should have never existed. The reason for keeping it is typically involves a because it's our only planning tool argument, without which, as the arguments go, we would not be able to receive certain grants and funding from state and federal treasuries. To lose that free money that allows us to develop cool communities and desirable places to live would be wrong. But it's not free. And it's neither free in real dollars, or is it in any other, or in its other more insidious effect on private property rights. First, there's the money. The cost of the county's involvement with Talos, as requested, is $16,875 tonight. It's budgeted in your Schedule A at $18,750. The cost to the county through its road commission is roughly $36,000. The same road commission, by the way, which has a current deficit of $500,000, $500,000. That represents the two largest local contributors to the Talos program. The townships pay very little in comparison to that. Because of some of the costs of the township entities may seem insignificant, but the total, including the county and the road commission, brings it to $69,000. And I appreciate you having the information for us. I think that's real important. Add to this the free money provided by the Michigan Department of Transportation totaling, and when I say free money, it's, we all pay for it through our taxes. Another $50,000 to bring the total to $119,750 a year. And that doesn't even include the per diem employee costs, the mileage by the 22 members of Talos, who in some way are compensated for their time and their travel to the monthly meetings. In fact, our own Commissioner, Ross Richardson, who receives a $35 per diem per meeting, as did I, when attending the meetings and representing the Planning Commission. This adds a cost to the county yet another $420 per person, or at least for us, yearly, for a single commissioner's attendance, as well as the possibility for mileage if he chooses to bill for it. And though employee time or the methods which other agencies and governments pay for their representation is not at my immediate disposal, it can hardly be argued that it comes at no cost. Further additional meetings take place as committees of Talos. As you guys, the committees do further studies and other work groups. The time itself is valuable, is money. And what does $500,000+ spent in the last few years buy us? A planner for the road commission, according to the director Gillis, grant possibilities from the feds, an attractive but probably unnecessary bypass to use up $10 million in Michigan Department of Transportation funds while our roads are in the worst shape ever, management of an earmark that eventually was pulled and used for a Buckley Road project, and plans that may infringe on property owners' rights of use in certain cases. And number 5 is the other part of this type of organization that is seldom challenged. These things go on without challenge from those of us who make these decisions. While we all want warm and inviting environments with bikeable paths, walkable streets, and flowery views, the necessary measures often come at the cost of depriving property owners of their rights to develop, sell, or simply hold unmodified land that is paid for, taxes are paid on, and should be considered rightfully under their control. And last night at a Peninsula Township meeting, there was a constituent with concerns over a new master plan that they have that threatens his ability to use the property he purchased 25 years ago in the manner that he feels is best. And while it has little to do with the Talus issue directly, it provides a basis to the argument that planning of other people's property and use of that property has an undeniable toll on our citizens. Talus has also fostered the efforts of the Grand Vision, which has as its goals clustering of populations and prohibition of use in certain corridors. My argument would be to stop efforts like Talus. At a time when the communities have the wherewithal to buy land as needed to provide the desired results of community centers, perhaps they should do so. That would be better than zoning away real ownership rights through kangaroo committees of politicians and citizens who seem to always have a better plan for what to do with what is not theirs in the first place.
I'm sorry to hear you don't like democracy.
And I'm not finished.
Excuse me, I have the
I'm not
floor.
finished, sir.
Ross, I don't think he's finished.
You weren't
He's got
finished.
the
I'm
floor
sorry,
still.
good pause there.
There are the questionnaires that go out. Would you like a slap in the face? Would you like 2 slaps in the face? Or would you like 3 slaps in the face? I mean, what are you going to pick when you have no choice? And that's how these committees, these commissions, and these organizations start. And that's my view. And I speak for myself, of course, and I speak for many of those who put me here. I'm done, Ross.
Okay, Ross?
First of all, let's not confuse transportation planning with zoning. We're not talking about the same thing here. Talus is about transportation planning. To my knowledge, we don't have any private businesses or private individuals out there building transportation systems for, the public at large. So it's pretty much a government function. So if you're going to have a government function, then when you're getting the government involved, by definition, you're getting the people involved. And that's what all these unwieldy and, I guess, what some people might consider messy committees are about. But TC Talus is the place where the region gets together and talks about and makes decisions and makes projections on transportation planning. The main cost of the Grand Vision project, which you so readily sneer at, was a transportation study. It was to generate data to see where we went, how we went there, and where we needed to upgrade, and maybe where we didn't need to upgrade or build more roads. So that data was the main expense of the, what's generally referred to as the Grand Vision. Having said that, TC Talus is about just the transportation planning part of that, and the main cost is
Matt Skills.
Matt Skills, who you see sitting before you. There are no other staff. Matt Skills is the only staff. And so to say that making plans about how we design roads somehow immediately steps on private private rights? I mean, the whole point of transportation systems was to increase trade and increase the value of private property. I mean, this is why we have transportation. I mean, if it's not a government function, I don't know whose function it is. I will say that I am happy that you at least realizes that you weren't a good fit for Talis and you had the decency to resign from the board.
Rob?
I see, from what I've heard and read so far, that a lot of things that really, to me, should fall under the road commission. Studying the traffic patterns, that's a road commission thing in my mind. And I welcome you to give me more information between now and the end of the month when the main board votes on this fully, because I expect it to pass this board. But in a year when we have a budget deficit and we can't even afford fireworks on 4th of July, I just can't justify paying the extra, $16,800. It's 3 times what they wanted for the fireworks, and we couldn't even do that. I just can't justify spending the money.
Larry?
2 points. One is we could afford the fireworks. The board chose not to fund it. We do have enough money in our budget to pay for that allocation, but the board chose not to do that. The second issue is that I did have an opportunity to speak with Elaine Wood and Matt McCauley from the Northwest Michigan Council of Governments. They were kind enough to kind of fold TC Talis into their building gratis, pretty much gratis, user space, giving them an opportunity in a home to help coordinate some of their regional planning efforts as well. They thought it would be a nice fit. They would be the transportation side, and they also do multiple other components in regional planning and do capture state and federal money. It was just their personal opinion, along with mine, after speaking with them, that we really need to sit back as an entity, TC Talis, and as a community, and do a new assessment on the role of TC Talis, what their mission would be, what their goals would be, what they would try to accomplish moving forward after the completion of the funding of the Grand Vision, and all honestly, do a self-assessment. Should it be in the form of its present structure? Should it be aligned with something else? Should it exist? And the purpose behind their request is to allow them, along with public input and the other components of their partnership, to do that assessment and to bring back the results. So I do support, and we did put in the budget, I do support the continuation of funding to allow them and their partners to do the assessment and to keep Matt in place to do that, to help assist in that process. And that, when they complete that process, I'm sure it will be prior to the next year's billing cycle, that not only the funding arms of all the components that you see in your packet would have a chance to assess that information, but we would indeed have an opportunity to assess the information that they're providing and ask questions and come to some conclusion about the direction of TC Talis. So I think it would be appropriate to fund it for this year with the understanding that we would take a hard look at where are we at with regional transportation planning moving forward.
Sonny?
Well, TC Talis, Transportation and Land Use. Yeah, this organization, I believe, has done a pretty thorough job dealing with the transportation component. I'm not so sure about the land use part, and Matt and I have had that discussion before, so it's nothing new. But the one thing that they do is they look at us regionally, and they talk about transportation corridors and things that we do not have any other tool to use to do that. Whether I completely agree with the Grand Vision results is not completely relevant, because most everyone knows that I don't completely agree with it. But the fact is that I don't know who else could have possibly managed a process like that. You know, I had the opportunity to participate. I did participate, along with a lot of other people throughout our community. And the end result may not have been exactly what I pictured it was going to be, but I had my opportunity to participate. I don't know who else, other than TC Talus, could have possibly brought that process together. And therefore, I will support the continuance of TC Talus because I believe we need to look at bigger pictures. We need to look at things besides the County Road Commission looking at Grand Traverse County roads. We need to look at corridors. We need to look at state highways. We need to look at private roads. All of those things are part of our transportation system, along with mass transit, along with, you know, possible future rail and expansion of the airport. All of those are transportation issues that need to be addressed for our community that the County Road Commission, even if they had the money, which we all know they don't, simply do not have the expertise to do. And that's what MAP brings us in TC Talus.
Chris?
Well, I'm reminded of something Commissioner Fleece said when he was here last and we were and we voted on this issue. And he said, you know, from his experience, you know, all people did was sit around and talk. And as far as he knew, that's all they still did. Well, I did attend one TC Talus meeting, and I do expect this motion to pass tonight, and I will be attending some more TC Talus meetings. Quite honestly, Matt, I don't know what we're getting for our money. I really do believe that Tom Menzel, in his short tenure at Beta, has done more for regional transportation than TC Talus has done since its inception. And for that reason, I mean, I just don't know what we're getting for our money. It's still unclear to me. For that reason, I'm going to be voting no, but I do expect it to pass.
Jason?
For the record, the East Bay Township declined on Monday to participate with the wayfinding, which was one of the TC Talus recommendations that actually did pass recently. The other recommendation that passed was that repair of South Airport Road. And of course, these were measures, or these were proposals or recommendations that passed, even in light of having no financing for these particular things. So we're going to continue to pay over $100,000 a year, or prorated to the end of the year, if that's what you're suggesting, Commissioner Inman or Chairman, to have this board plan, which is something that probably could be done with a subcontractor as necessary by the Road Commission. And I think that is probably the appropriate place where this type of activity comes from. In all, it's an incredible cost as far as resources, money, time of 22 people a meeting, or however many show up typically. It's just barely enough to have a quorum. I'm telling you, we're looking into the future, and we're going to need every penny that we can set aside. And this is not helping us along if we move this forward.
Dennis?
I just wanted to make one clarification. Earlier, it was stated that TC Talus was the initiator or the starter of the Grand Vision. Truth be told, it was the County Board of Commissioners who was the starter of the Grand Vision. The County Board of Commissioners appointed a 26-member committee from the community to look at transportation and land use issues. That grew to 32 members. TC Talus was appointed as the staff to manage the really quite large project. But I just think it's important for us to realize that it was the County Board who initiated that in conjunction with several other groups, but it was the County Board who took the action to establish the Grand Vision.
But it was guided by the Talus.
Actually, it was guided by us.
Yep.
It was the County Board, the Road Commission, and a couple of local environmental groups, along with the Chamber of Commerce, that really was the key group that started the work. And we worked probably for a year on that before we found funding and then formalized the group. But it was the County Board who worked on that.
Just, my comments are is that I've been on all the transportation committees in Grand Traverse County for I can't remember how long. Well, both the chamber, both the rail plan, the public transportation. I've sat on Beta Board. I've sat on the MAC Transportation Committee, and I sat on NACO's Transportation Committee. All of them are planning agencies, and none of them do the amount of work that TC Talus does. So, you know, TC Talus, I do believe, brings a lot to the table when they are sitting at the table, and they are necessary at every one of these organizations to sit down, bring the data that they have at their fingertips that's not available someplace else. And so Matt has become very, very knowledgeable about how to bring that data in and be able to show us how to do it. You give Tom Menzel a lot of credit for bringing people together, but I think it's the Public Transportation Committee of the Chamber of Commerce that's brought those people together. And Tom has been a facilitator of part of that. But that committee is the one that's brought the people together at the table, and they are on a continuous basis having those kind of conversations with each other because of those committees that are there. So, you know, I'm a strong advocate of planning. I'm a strong advocate of transportation planning, and I will support this motion. Do I have any other comments? Okay, we'll have a roll call, please.
Commissioner Richardson?
Yes.
Max Bauer?
No.
Inman?
Yes.
Henschel?
No, thank you.
Gilman?
No.
Wheelock?
Yes.
Thomas?
Yep.
Lemkool?
Yes.
5-3.
Okay, motion passes.
Thank
Okay,
you.
thank you very much, Matt.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Okay, next on the agenda is Brownfield. Gene, are you going to be bringing that together?
Good evening. My name is Jean Dorenzi with the Grand Traverse County Planning and Development Department. I am here this evening representing the Brownfield Redevelopment Authority. The Brownfield Authority is working with the developer, Valamere Companies, to redevelop the properties on the corner of Front and Division, which is commonly known as Union 76 and the 3 adjacent parcels. These parcels is a known facility with free product. The opportunity for a DEQ loan will help improve the environmental conditions and move this project forward. The loan does require the county's full faith and credit, similar to all of the other loans that we've had with the Brownfield Authority. The Grand Traverse Auto site, the Kinney site, the Harborview site, and the Village of Grand Traverse Commons. The Brownfield Authority secures either certificate of deposit from the developer or an irrevocable letter of credit from the developer in the name of Grand Traverse County to secure that full faith and credit in case that there's not enough tax increment financing to reimburse that loan. We can draw from the letter of credit or the certificate of deposit.
Is it in the full amount?
It's in the full amount of the loan proceeds, so there's no risk for the county itself. This is a very important site for not only the Brownfield Authority, but for the community as a whole. The Brownfield Authority is working in cooperation with the county and with the City of Traverse City to put together a comprehensive remediation plan for this site to have cleanup as a whole. To have access to this property is a source, and being able to clean this, we believe this property is a source of free product, and have access to have a developer to upfront this cost will improve the environmental conditions. And the Brownfield Authority is recommending favorable recommendation from this authority to make application to the DEQ for the amount of $1 million and to secure either a certificate of deposit for the developer or irrevocable letter of credit.
Chris?
I would move for approval for the BRA staff to submit DEQ loan application in the amount of $1 million requiring the full faith and credit of Grand Traverse County. Further, Brownfield Authority shall secure certificate of deposits or an irrevocable letter of credit matching the $1 million loan proceeds from the developer to protect the county for repayment of the loan.
Support. Thomas? Any other discussion? Ross?
Wasn't it last year that we approved that you and Scott Howard brought forward a proposal to file suit against the property owners in this area to, to recover money to clean up the site?
Correct. And we are still moving forward with that, Ross. The environmental consultant, Horizon Environmental, has done the studies that they had access to on the monitoring wells, but we did not have access to this site, and that's the comprehensive remediation plan that our consultant is putting together, which we anticipate will be this month or next month to be brought for the Brownfield Authority.
So even if we loan the money, or rather the DEQ loans the money, I guess, there's still a possibility that we could recover
Yes.
money through the lawsuit.
I think that the key is, Ross, that we would be facing a significant cost of litigation with some level of risk, undetermined at this point in time, and that if we could accomplish the same thing by someone coming in and cleaning up the property, there may not be a need to move forward or to go all the way through with that activity. We just don't know yet. Is that fair, Gene?
Well, no, that's my question. Is this instead of that, or is this in addition to that?
This would be like moving on parallel tracks, I think.
It's going to be parallel tracks, and we'd still look at we still have a lot of other work to do on cleaning up the intersection as well. So it would be parallel tracks, but this would be able to move us forward much more quickly with a new developer coming on this site.
The difference is, the thing that has changed here somewhat significantly, and it still requires lots of approvals and concurrence with the city, is this the new developer represents CVS Pharmacies, which whether or not it will get approval from the city is an organization that is used to these kinds of cleanups. They're always located on corners, very often located on corners that used to hold gas stations. So they're used to this kind of work, and they bring to the table access to money and securing loans of this nature that we've not had in the past. So it might give us a chance to contain this plume, get rid of the free, what are they called?
Free product.
The free product that's still moving and mitigating. And so that's why we take both tracks.
But the $1 million loan is going to be repaid by tax diversions, right?
Tax increment financing.
By taxes yet to be generated.
But the $1 million is only a part of what this is going to cost to clean.
Okay. And who is the loan is the loan to CVS Pharmacy, or is the loan to the developer that's working on behalf of CVS Pharmacy?
The loan is in the name of Grand Traverse County. We would work with the developer's consultant, and our consultant would oversee to make sure that the cleanup is managed and completed per the work plan.
But the guarantees would come from the developer, not from CVS, correct?
The certificate of deposits and irrevocable letter of credit comes from the private developer, correct?
Okay. And then my next question is, if the project doesn't go forward, because there's certainly a lot of questions about it at the city level, does that mean that the cleanup is abandoned, or?
The cleanup would be abandoned because we'd have it's our risk then. We need a developer to have that certificate of deposit or letter of credit.
And without the TIF collection, we're not going to do that, right, Gene?
Correct.
Okay.
We need a guarantee.
So even if we approve the loan now, nothing happens until the whole project is approved.
And remember, all you're doing is approving submittal of a loan, of an application.
Okay.
This is not accepting a loan.
We're hoping we can accept a loan, but this is
that's
just an
down the road.
application.
Okay.
Right.
But without the developer, we wouldn't move forward.
Okay, Jason?
This plume, this has not been handled then by a previous owner? I mean, this is something that's an abandoned situation,
That's correct.
company out of business? I mean, it's one of those situations where...
There have been some efforts to do some mitigation, but it's only been by one or two partners in that corner or over the years, like the bank, for example, is doing something, correct?
The bank is doing it's a four corners, and they were all gas stations at one point.
Right.
The Brownfield Authority worked with the hand surgeon, the new medical center, and put multi-phase extraction systems in to help pull from the corners, and so that is working. And Speedway has a remediation system as well, and the bank has a system as well.
So there are parts that are already established, this is the last.
Well, and I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Gene, but didn't the fourth corner, at one time, the DEQ came in and started some work on the fourth corner?
Where the hand surgeon
That was
is.
where they.
Oh, that was where the hand
That's the hand
surgeon is, I'm
surgeon.
sorry, yeah. So yeah, there's been nothing on that.
Because I've seen the vents there we're talking about the northeast corner, the abandoned stations.
The abandoned station.
For
The
30
problem
years.
is that there's still the free product that's in
Right.
the intersection, and we believe on this site.
But even in the areas that have been cleaned up, the most recent studies that we had done have indicated that where 4 or 5 years ago, they showed lower levels of contaminants, the level of contaminant is now showing increased. And this is not only in the direction that the plume is moving towards the lake, so it continues to spread. So we made some progress, but it's not being contained.
What's the timetable on this?
The DEQ loan, if we received approval, we would make application in July, and we would hope to have that in September.
And then, as far as the actual remediation would begin?
Hopefully before the snow.
And how long does it take typically?
Could be next month.
I mean, no, how long does it take, I mean, from the time that they actually begin the remediation?
Depends on the
They don't know
DEQ.
because they don't know how big the plume is.
Right.
No.
Not only that,
A
but
year?
Sometime, it can take
Multiple years? I mean,
Hopefully a year, we could, it would be done. If we started in October, we would hope to see something occurring, being built on that site by the spring.
But would the contamination be completely contained within a year?
No.
Depends on the system.
So the
Depends on the
remediation can
system.
continue while
Yeah.
the other structure is?
Right.
That's correct.
Okay,
And
that's-
may have to continue for several years.
Which is, the idea, of course, is bringing that value up for the TIF, I mean, for the return
Yes.
of the value of the property.
The systems are in place to work multiple years.
The city has to approve the project first.
I still have to wrap my head around some of the ways, the mechanisms, how that all works, so.
Understand.
Okay.
Yes.
Sonny?
Gene, the only real question I had when I read this is it unusual that they wouldn't start making any payment back for 5 years?
No, that's the best part of the DEQ loan, because the DEQ loan is basically to get to the environmental issues. So they need to clean that up and then wait for the TIF value to increase and use the TIF to reimburse the loan. So that's the DEQ's logic, is that we clean it up and then we wait for the TIF increase to pay back that loan.
It's part of the DEQ guidelines.
It
Right.
is the DEQ's guidelines.
And we absolutely need to note that even though we get the loan, the developer doesn't get the money unless he shows that he's done the cleanup.
Right, he shows that he does the cleanup, and we have that guarantee, that payback guarantee.
Rob?
When do you project this TIF to end?
The brownfield plan, this is connected to the hand surgery brownfield plan, and that TIF ends in 2027.
Okay, and if they didn't make $1 million by then to pay this back, then what?
If the TIF doesn't have $1 million to pay it back, is that what you mean?
Right, yeah.
Then we would draw from that certificate of deposit to pay it
Okay.
The
back.
guarantees.
In 2027.
No, the DEQ loan, if we get it in 2011, we don't pay for 5 years, and then it's a 10-year amortization. So we would pay that, we would draw on those certificate of deposits
After 10 years.
in
Or
the
15.
sixth year, if there's not enough TIF, in the sixth year of that loan.
Okay, to
So
make
by
the payments.
2026,
To start
it'll all be
making-
paid off, even though we may not, in fact,
Okay.
brownfield runs to 2027.
And just so we're clear, because I don't know if all of us were caught this, but this is county property currently, or? No.
Private property.
Who owns it currently?
Currently, the station is owned by Blarney Castle.
Okay.
Do I have any other questions? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's carried.
Thanks, Gene.
Thank you, Jane. Thank you. Next is Bill Rokas.
Gene, I won't be here in the morning. I gotta be in Leland.
Bill Rokas, Grand Traverse County Treasurer. What I'm here for today is to give you my annual update on the tax foreclosure fund. This fund is the fund that was set up roughly 6 years ago when the county took over the foreclosure process from the state of Michigan. This fund accounts for, once my delinquent taxes go into foreclosure, all the fees that are assigned to the taxes for the foreclosure and the cost of foreclosure flow through this fund. And then when if there's properties that aren't collected, then they go to auction, and the proceeds are then put in this fund as restricted, and it's those restricted auction proceeds that are made available to the county to use after roughly a 2-year lag from the auction to the date that it's made available. So what we've done in this report, $98,000 was the auction proceeds from the 2006 delinquent taxes that were sold in 2009. Those are the new proceeds that become available as of this month. That was by far our highest auction proceeds. Typically, we've been averaging about, I think over the years, about $35,000, $40,000 a year. So that $98,000 is made available now, and in the past, when I've come to the board, we've left the prior year's auction, the 4 years, totaling the $91,000 in this fund. And then what we did last year with the county land bank, we proposed putting these tax foreclosure funds from the auction into a affordable housing trust fund. So actually in November of last year, we knew what these amounts were going to be. I mean, the $91,000 was from prior years that wasn't transferred, and we knew the $98,000 was going to become available this year in June. So what we did, we presented to you a proposal back in November of 2010, which was Resolution 255 of 2010. And basically, at that point, you approved the transfer of these funds to that housing trust fund. And one of the reasons we did that back in November was because we had, the planning department had wanted to apply these funds as a matching for a HUD grant. And since then, we have received the matching funds for this $190,000. We haven't physically got them, but we were approved the grant. So we've already leveraged this $190 and doubled the funds. So that pretty much is the report. I don't know if we really need a resolution because we've already, I mean, the resolution was passed back in November. Unless you want to confirm that resolution or something, but it's just presenting you this information as this is the time that we do it every year in June.
Yes, Ross.
Well, I just want to make a couple points because, I was all new to this stuff last year. The $190,000 previous to the establishment of the tax foreclosure fund, that money all went to Lansing, right?
Yeah, once my taxes went into foreclosure, all the fees and the sale proceeds were handled by Lansing. And this whole fund, the fund balance in this fund as of the end of December was $434,000. Those funds, had we not taken over and done this ourselves, would have all been in Lansing.
Right.
And they would have had control of these funds.
So I see the number of, for 2010, which obviously we haven't dealt with yet, the $34,305.
That's correct.
When will we know what the 2011 number is?
Those I've just foreclosed, and we ended up with 12 parcels this year so far. There's still a couple of them that have gone to circuit court trying to get the foreclosure amended to allow them. But there's 12 parcels currently. That sale will typically takes place in early August.
So basically, the owners of the foreclosed properties have until then to...
Well, they
basically-
had until March 31st. They've missed any opportunity to get their property back. But
Oh, okay.
until we actually sell the property, we've had a couple people. One was last week, went to court, and the judge ruled in the county's favor as far as upholding that we did was proper in the foreclosure process, and we have another one that's appealing next Monday.
So there'll be an auction in about 2 months?
Right.
Okay.
And that's one of the reasons why there's this lag as well, is because we need to make sure that if we have costs or if we get problems with property or we have expenses with these properties that we're holding, those expenses are all paid out of the proceeds from the other properties that do sell. And these amounts that you're seeing here are the net proceeds. For instance, the 2010 auction that you just mentioned, we actually, the auction brought in $43,000, but we had $9,000 of costs that were associated. Paying the back taxes back to the revolving fund is the big cost. But there are some other upkeep costs between the time that we obtain it in the end of March until the property is auctioned off.
Sonny?
Well, I guess, just maybe a reminder, and Bill and Dean are both here, they also sit on the land bank. What's happened, in 2010 is the land bank took the foreclosed properties, those 12 parcels. Now, since that point, we've offered them to nonprofits. We've actually engaged a realtor to help us market some of those, and the minimum bid on the market is, according to the land bank's decision, is the SEV of the property. Instead of just whatever the tax bill is, it's the SEV of the property. But I think more importantly is we went to these properties and we cleaned them up. We took care of the trash, we cleaned them up. We've been involved in some demolition and recycling of the mess, and we've cleaned those properties up for the neighbors. If we'd have sold them for the $1,300 or whatever the tax was, I'm pretty sure many of those places would still be blighted in their communities. We have a couple pieces that I'm not still quite sure how marketable they are. And the Strawberry Point piece comes to mind. I think last week it was probably underwater. But we truly are looking at it. And there's, in the 12 parcels that Bill's alluding to, they are coming in the 2011 sale. There's some pretty decent pieces of property here that should be saleable and bring additional revenue to the county.
Jason?
Now, we have these because of the inability of the former owners to pay their taxes.
Correct.
Or they didn't want to, one or the other. I mean, are most of them blighted? Or are some of them just hard luck cases? They kept them up, but
there's a variety of, I'd say the majority are not desirable pieces, but occasionally there's some that we get, like in this $98,000 that we had in for the 2009 sale, there was one parcel that brought in, I think it was 60-some thousand of that.
And
so the bank foreclosed on it, and then the bank, for some reason, didn't.
No, they failed.
They failed to.
They
wow.
forgot
So
to pay.
these are beyond the banks then at this point. And then, we talk about affordable housing, and I just love when these discussions come up, somebody says, well, we want affordable, what is affordable housing? It's never clear to me what is affordable housing. what it is to me is totally different than what it is to nearly anybody else on the board, I think.
Oh, I see what you mean.
Yet, we will, to provide those services to people for affordable housing, and then we take take properties from other people, you know, and in the process, we milk it through the web of government, and it's just me saying stuff, I guess, but it's just kind of hard to see that people lose their property because they can't keep up with the taxes that we levy on them for things like planning projects that would have otherwise, you know, it just, anyhow, that's all I have to say.
One of the parcels that they did get was a burned-out place on Airport Road that they did sell to Habitat for Humanity, and then they built a house in there and sold it, and it was a high-energy efficient home that they got, and the gentleman that picked it up said that his normal gas bill would be about $250 a month, and he's now doing it $250 a year.
That's great.
And so, you know, affordable housing isn't so much what you pay for the mortgage, it's what you pay for your utilities. And
Operations.
and the new idea of trying to go to zero-based energy homes, which is exactly what they're going to put on the railroad property, I think is just exciting to see what's going to happen there. So, any other discussion? All those in favor, oh, excuse me, there is no motion. Sorry. I caught myself, I caught it. Bill, thank you very much for the update.
Yep, thank you.
Next is Dean for Finance.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, Dean and I were just talking, we just wanted to mention to you that you have other people here, not including our attorney, he has to wait till the end, but there are other people here, Danny Brown, and I know the judge and Greg Brainerd from Family Court are here, and if you wanted to go ahead and move them up and take care of those items, and then go back to Dean and my work, we're glad to do that.
Okay. Greg, would you like to come forward? What's the...
Well, I think that would be that would be F, administration process.
Okay.
And so I think the judge is here for that, and Greg is here for that as well.
So, okay. Larry, you would like to lead that?
Yeah, we substituted a memo in the packet, replaced it with entitlement of 2012 budget process, and this memo replaces that packet. And what we did is apologies, we sent out a couple versions of this after we got done reviewing it for like the second and third time. But in the packet, we originally had thought about some sort of function of the budget ad hoc committee, and that we use for a recommendation for the 2010 budget shortfall. And the more that I talked to Dennis about it, the more I became convinced, and he came convinced that we really need to shift our thinking in terms of how we want to approach the 2012 budget. So we talked about that we really wanted to absorb all the information and comments that you have been sending to Dennis in terms of how you would like to see that process occur. And there were a number of components to that, and that was, first of all, that you'd like to have some kind of prioritization and ranking of all the programs and services that the county offers, and to have an understanding of those and the dollar amounts that we spend. And two, perhaps we can develop a public input, public ranking in terms of what they think is important in terms of our funding here at the county. And third was to give really everybody an opportunity to absorb all the different information that we would like to present to the board during the month of June, all the way straight through the month of the end of September, in terms of what the department heads are coming in with their recommendations, to have an input session from all the commissioners regarding how they feel about the different areas of funding within county government, and to get a ranking on that and a compilation of that, and also and how that might compare to how the departments have submitted their budget, and how that might compare to whatever public input survey or ranking process that we might be able to accomplish, if we're able to accomplish that, along with the county administrator's thoughts regarding some other supplemental things that might be broader in nature that we could take a look at in terms of shoring up the budget for 2012. So what we tried to do is develop a schedule where we encompassed all that together, and we were trying to grab components of each county commissioner's thoughts in terms of what they were trying to get out of the 2012 budget process and bring it into a schedule that we would hopefully try to have direct staff to do for us, which would provide some time in June and July and August to accomplish those things. And as you know, as you may or may not know, for new commissioners, we by law have to approve the budget at our Board of Commissioners meeting, at the last meeting in October by statute. So what we tried to do is put together a memo here that kind of outlined how we saw that process going forward month by month, so you could have a feel for what we were trying to accomplish. And again, what Dennis and I were trying to do is to put all the different components of what all the feedback we've gotten from the commissioners, either in the open meetings or the times that you have stopped in to talk to Dennis about things you'd like to have in terms of a process for the 2012 budget, and try to incorporate your thoughts and opinions in the schedule. So that's why we have an amended 2012 budget process for your consideration here for tonight. We really didn't get into discussion about, does the budget ad hoc committee have a role in the 2012 budget? And Dennis and I talked briefly on that, and I think that would be up to the board to decide at any time during the process if they felt that they wanted some more in-depth review and a report back on certain different things that were going on during this process. We could use perhaps the budget process, the budget ad hoc committee, but that would be up to the board to decide. But right now, the memo as it stands does not have a component that would be used as we did in the 2010 budget, where a number of commissioners got together that were the chairs of the committees along with the chairman to come back and report the recommendations. So this is really what I would say is really a transparent, open, public, county commissioner heavily involved input process that I think that everybody really wanted to have for 2012, and what we tried to do is incorporate some of the components of budgeting for outcomes in this process and try to see if we can accomplish some of the components that we looked at for that process. So with that, Dennis and I felt comfortable in coming forward with you tonight and suggesting this schedule and all the items that we had put on the memo in terms of areas we want to accomplish and the timeline for that.
The discussion should be on the budget process. So, Chris?
And that's what this memo is. Okay, all right.
Right, Chris?
Well, as far as the process goes, I firmly believe all 9 of us were elected. All 9 of us need to be talking about the budget. Some of us represent the city, some of us represent rural areas. I think we all need to have a voice. So I would not want to just begin the budget process with 4 commissioners. I want all 9 involved. That's my preference.
Okay, and that's what we did.
The other thing that I would like prepared during the process, and Dennis and I were talking about this when I was in his office last week. I was going through some old budget books, and I noticed a memo from Fred Kiesler, which stated that one of the programs in his discretionary, it is a discretionary program. It's the WIC program. Mm-hmm. And I had forgotten that was a discretionary program. What I would like from staff is a list of discretionary programs and a list of mandated programs. Okay. Because and Dennis, I certainly don't necessarily expect the costs associated with, I don't know, each of those programs, unless it's easy for you to do that.
that's a good suggestion, that, we break that out between
Yeah,
mandated and
because, I mean,
unmandated.
there's no sense in
Right.
arguing about mandated programs. They're mandated. We have to do them.
And the other component that, if I can speak, is the information we got back, the feedback we got back with some of the concerns from the department heads and the elected officials, is that all these indirect costs, like the cost of MERS, and, MERS did this acceleration from 28 years to 16 years, and, how do we make that, you can't penalize all the areas of county government for those accelerations and those costs, those accelerated costs. So, one of the discussions I had with Dennis is, maybe we ought to take that and park that in a corner somewhere and just say we're just going to, we're going to do some things in 012 to help compensate for those costs that, are uncontrollable, by the departments, and get really down to the meat of, the funding of the programs and the services.
So, I also need to recognize that we have a letter from the 86th District Court Judge talking about their issue with an increase. So maybe some of that, when you start looking at increases in budgets and decrease, maybe an explanation, because of some of the new county commissioners coming on board, they may not understand that we moved them into a new facility.
Right.
And when we did that,
Yeah.
we expected to increase some costs to be able to do that.
Yeah.
So we need to have a little bit of explanation when you start putting this stuff down. There's reasons for what happened, not just the fact that they got an increase, but also it's like your retirement funds and everything else.
Yes.
Jason?
As a part of Commissioner Max Powers' recommendation of the lists, I think that when we get the list of what is mandated and what is discretionary, those things that are mandated, if we could have a level to which it's mandated, if that's possible.
That's not. That's a very difficult thing to do. The law says that you are mandated to provide certain services, but for example, in the courts, it's at a serviceable level. So it's a subjective number. It's at a level that is, that allows the court to be able to do the business that they are mandated to do. And frankly, the only way that's ever settled, other than through working together, which is what we do, is when you go to court and a court decides what a serviceable level is. Seriously. So it's very difficult to, and that's really the key. I wanted to bring that up. It's, unless you're just talking about what programs, unless you're having a discussion and focusing in on programs to eliminate completely, it's not fair to just say, well, these are mandated, we're not going to mess with those. Because when you look at mandated programs, you only need to fund them at a serviceable level. Now, I tend to believe that we're funding them at a serviceable level, but that's the point. So, when you're looking at cutting budgets, you really still have to look at the whole picture. And so it's important to know what's mandated and what isn't, but then you have to go drill deeper to that and say, is this really a serviceable level?
Well, I think then perhaps we can determine that as a part of that discussion. I think it's still a valid point, though, to have a list that delineates what is and what isn't.
Absolutely, we can do that.
Chris?
Well, Dennis, I was not suggesting, that we get discretionary programs versus mandated programs just so we can start eliminating programs. But you're exactly right. We do have to have mandated programs at a serviceable level, and there may be discretionary programs that need to be reduced as a result of that.
Or that you may decide to keep at the level they're at.
You never know.
And it's relevant to the discussion we're having. When Dennis and I got together, and I just suggested, what would if we had to assume a budgeted amount that, in terms of cuts, what year would that be? What would be close? And
I'm going to bring back this.
I understand it, but my point is that
it's a process, not what we're doing.
I understand it, but the point was that when Carol responded, those were the components that should be discussed as a part of the process, is that, when we start breaking out the numbers, whether they had a decrease or an increase, that, we have to have an understanding behind the numbers as to how those numbers were reflected and why those numbers may have gone up or gone down. And she brings up some good points that we should not only look at the number, we should look behind the numbers and try to get an understanding why. So I only bring that up for that purpose.
Ross?
Dennis, does this timetable work for for you and staff.
Yeah, it's going to be demanding, but we can make it work.
One thing that struck me was that the proposed budget wouldn't actually be done until the 21st of September.
That's typically when it is done.
Is
Always at Ways and Means in the month of August. That's the budget that we recommend to you. It's always at Ways and Means in the month of August.
Okay, but this says September 21st.
Well,
I mean,
look at the page.
well, let me phrase it differently. When did we get our budget books last year?
At the Ways and Means meeting in August.
In August. So is this a month later?
No, you'll be getting it at the Ways and Means meeting in August. If you look under month of August, administration recommends 2012 budget Board of
Oh,
Commissioners.
so then basically what you're
And
saying
then
is
the next month is your
by
work.
the 21st, hopefully it's done.
You'll give us direction as to what changes you want from our recommendation, and we will bring you back your revised budget on the 21st.
Sonny?
Mr. Chairman, I would move that we approve the 2012 budget process and timeline as outlined and distributed to us this evening.
Support.
Okay. Judge, would you like to make a comment? If that's all right with the rest of the commission?
Sure.
Yes.
We have 7 committee department heads in this room, so.
TJ Phillips, I'm one of the district judges that are in your county. We also are in Antrim and Leelanau counties. The first thing is a question, is your nephew out of Afghanistan?
Actually, he arrives back in Bay City
Oh,
at
good.
6 o'clock Friday evening. He's in Indianapolis right now.
Cool.
Good. Thank you for asking.
Somehow that's more important than money tonight, so I'm glad to hear that. But obviously, money's important to you, it's important to us. We're a separate and equal branch of government, as we all learned in grade school. What I didn't learn in grade school is that we don't have any money, okay? So we have to rely upon the 3 funding units for our funding. And we try to be a good partner with the counties that we work in. And it's worked, I think, for us anyways. I hope it's worked for you as well. We try to do the right thing. I mean, if there's a problem, like a few years ago, and I know that some of you don't have the history because you're newer on the board, there was a problem with jail overcrowding. And we addressed it, we stepped up, and we found innovative ways to handle that. We have a sobriety court, so there's less jail and more therapy. We have community corrections. We use them to do intensive probation in certain cases. And we're getting people out of jail quicker and into help. You know, do they always take it? No, but at least it's out there if they want it. And there was, prior study, there was a study that, the Siegel study, indicated that if we had more probation officers in district court, we'd have less jail overcrowding. We have more probation officers, and jail overcrowding is a history now. And we're concerned, very concerned. We're in a situation now where we're short one civil clerk. Because of that, we're behind. People file cases and they don't get filed, we don't process them as quickly as we should. We have cases that are dismissed because they're not processed as quickly as they should. An example is if they come in for a second summons, they have to do it within 91 days. But it has to be signed by the judge before the 91 days runs out. They come in less than 2 weeks before the time runs, and we're probably not going to get that process in time. So we don't have the people. It's our hope with e-ticketing that will free up more time, so we'll be able to get back and be the court we want to be as far as that goes. I think, I don't like to brag about the district court, but I think sometimes you have to, because I don't think people understand fully what we do. I know the general public has really clueless as to what we do in general, but I think you have a better feeling for what we do. Some of you have been jurors in my court, some of you have had matters in my court, and so I think you understand. But I think we're one of the few courts in the state of Michigan that has a sobriety court. We have a domestic violence court, which is, I think it's fair for the defendant, which is important. I mean, the defendant's protected by the Constitution, but it's much fairer for the victim as well. We have a mental health court, which is funded through grants, and Judge Forsman started that. Judge Haley's doing it now, and we're having people that get in trouble with trespass for violent issues. They're just kind of lost people in our community. And maybe in the old days, they would have been helped by the state hospital, which is not there anymore. But they are frequent flyers in our court system, and finally they're getting help. I mean, Judge Forsman, who worked in the system a number of years as a prosecutor, as a probate judge, and as a district judge before he retired, he would have defendants coming up and saying, "You're saving my life," and it's making a difference to the people. And just last year, Judge Haley started a veterans court. People are coming back from difficult places, and they're coming back having seen terrible things and being in terrible fear. And we cannot touch them as far as getting them turned around. A lot of times they're violent, a lot of times they have substance issues. But with the Veterans Court, the VA is jumping in and helping big time. We're helping people that really, really deserve our help. So I think we're doing the right thing for you. And when we saw this, and it was, obviously it's a concern. Why did something go up $500,000? Well, you built a wonderful courthouse for us, and it was a courthouse that is good for the public. It's good because we can keep victims away from the defendants. In the old courthouse, everybody was on top of each other. Right. We'd have an assaultive crime that we'd try, and there might be another one happening in the hallway because people are on top of each other. It actually happened one time. And there was no bathroom on the first floor in the old courthouse, so people would have to go upstairs. We had probably about 25 employees that shared one bathroom. We had 2 courts for 3 judges. One of the judges shared a bathroom with the jury, which worked okay unless there was a jury trial going on. And we didn't know how bad it was until we got into an adequate facility. Sometimes you see people that come to my court, and their norm is different than our norm. We're telling a 17-year-old kid, you really shouldn't be smoking dope, and he's smoking dope with his mom and dad. I mean, that's not the norm that we grew up in. You see abusive situations where kids are abused, and they think that's the norm, okay? And sometimes you have to move into a different norm for them, and that's, when you built the courthouse for us, and 4 of you were on the board that built that for us, and we appreciate it, and I think the public really appreciates it. That's a new norm for us, and we're very happy with that, and we're sorry it's costing more money, and I don't know if that's affordable housing anymore, but I think we're stuck with that $500,000 unless you sell the courthouse, and then we'd have to find another place to hang out, I guess. But we're concerned about things. We're concerned because we can't afford to lose any more clerks. If we lose another probation officer, that might affect jail population. It'll surely affect public safety. And what is the mandated function of a court? I think our function, this might sound a little righteous, but our function is to do justice and to protect people, to help people. And if you get rid of a probation officer, then somebody's not going to be helped, probably. So, but I think we're doing a good job. Like Judge Haley's sobriety court is used by the national sobriety courts as a teaching court. They come in every once in a while and learn from his experiences. And I think it's important to realize that Judge Haley is dealing with not only second-time offenders, but also felonies in our district court. Felons who are third-time offenders. And his track record is amazing. If someone has 2 drunk drivings, the chance that they're going to reoffend is 30%. 30% of them reoffend. His is at 3%. And so, I think he's doing the job. I think we're doing the job. And so, I would love to have any of you want to do a ride-along with a judge. You want to come to my court? We'll put you in a chair right next to the judge. You can whisper in my ear because sometimes I need help. But no, I would love to have you see what we do. I'd love to have you come on a Wednesday so you could be at my domestic violence court, then we'd shift you over to Judge Haley's sobriety court. So, we'd love to have you see what we do. And I thank you for building that building for us. We really needed it. And I'm sorry that it's costing you so much money, though. Money is tough, and we understand that. We try to be a good partner. We always try to, they give us a budget amount, but it doesn't stop there for us. We try to make sure that there's money that we can shoot back at the end of the year. We don't spend it all just because it's there. So, but, I'd be happy to answer any questions you have. I guess I'm a little emotional about this, but I appreciate your time. Sorry I took too much of your time.
Oh, no, Judge, thank you for coming. Very informative. You mentioned that your civil court is suffering because you lack a clerk. Could you give us more detailed information on that?
Sure, well,
I think that would be for a budget process rather than
I
for
can-
this discussion.
And I know, I'm not
I'll give you
asking
the
for it right
2-second
now. I'm not
version.
asking for it right now.
Remember, when the attorney says 2 seconds, it usually goes a little bit longer than that, but, we had a letter a few years back and said, could you be proactive? And we did not rehire 2 people that we didn't replace 2 people that retired.
I would like to hear from you during the budget process,
Okay,
what
we did
what that has meant.
I'd be happy to talk to you about it.
Okay, Sonny?
Well, I think, it's important that we are reminded and the community is reminded of the partnership we have with our courts. Because, I've done work in other communities where there is no partnership. I have a copy of a restraining order in my file where a judge in an adjacent county ordered that we had to cease all operations for the construction of their building while he was in court. It simply doesn't work that way. But, he thought he had that authority, and I suppose maybe he did, but we finished anyway. But, I think we truly have a very unique partnership with our courts. Sometimes I think we all are a little slack on our communication skills. I think we should talk more. I think we should get together more. But we truly have a very good partnership. And for that, I thank the judges and I thank the board and the administration, because we truly do have a unique experience if you go to other communities and look at other arrangements. You talk to other county commissioners throughout the state and throughout the country, their relationships for their courts are horrible. The horror stories that you hear are unbelievable. And we need to realize how fortunate we are and how fortunate our community is that we truly have judges that are dedicated to what's best for our community. And, like I said, the only shortfall I think we have, I don't think we communicate as well as we should. And we really need to work on that piece.
Jason?
How are we coming with the e-ticket process?
Okay, Carol could answer that better than I can. It's my understanding that it's on track, and it's,
Because I know that's going to help with the clerk issue.
It will, and that's,
quite a bit.
that's why we're willing to give up the clerk back then, because we figured that we could weather that storm, so.
Commissioner Don Sheehan is here. If you want to get an update on that, I'm sure Don could give you a quick 2-minute. But Don, you'd have to come up to a microphone.
You get more airtime tonight.
While he's coming up, Judge, have you had any naughty horse owner cases lately?
A what now?
He had a naughty horse owner 2 or 3 years ago.
Every once in a while, and the sad thing about a horse case is that there's more community members that are concerned about a horse than a child.
Oh, wow.
So we get all kinds of people there for horses, probably no one for a child. I'm not saying people shouldn't be there for horses, but I'm just saying that always bothered me. So.
Go ahead, Don.
All right, before I do that one, I know that Carol has worked also with her court vendor, and we work with them on the credit card processing. So they are now accepting credit card payments on their tickets, so they can pay those online, and it does go back and post directly into the system, so it's all the way through. So hopefully if she gets more people accepting that method of payment, that's also going to help too. On the traffic ticket, electronic ticket, it's a little slower than what we had hoped. The vendor, as it turns out, they were creating a custom application for every customer, and what they have moved to is they want a standardized application for Michigan, but then they've taken more time in trying to put all those specifications together. So we're still hoping, though, in the next month or two to get that implemented, and we're still going to have to go through with the officers and do that training. But, I mean, the idea is, yeah, they will write that electronic ticket, push it back into the police system, and also push it into the court system, hopefully all the way through with no entry.
Because time is money. Have you tried to encourage them to move their efforts along?
Oh, we have, yeah, and they're actually a subcontractor under our police vendor, and so they're well aware that we're going to be holding up the final payment until this project is in place.
We're having other glitches with the program too, not just the e-ticket piece.
And we're working our way through. You know, some of those issues are on our side, some are on their side. I mean, it goes both, but we're working our way through all of them.
Okay.
So.
Larry?
And Judge, I just want, if there's an apology, I'll do it. But the comparison was kind of an internal thing.
I understand, and Larry, you have been our liaison in the past,
Yeah.
and you've been on the board, the Community Corrections Board, so don't worry.
Yeah,
No
so when Dennis and I looked at the comparison when we did 08 versus 11, we looked at each other and said, this really reaffirms what the board has said, but, we really, it took us back and we looked at it and we said, yes, public safety is one of our top priorities in our community, and it shows in the 4 years of our funding that we have devoted a lot of resources to our public safety.
Well, Commissioner Inman is always a lot more diplomatic than I am. I looked at this and I said, the criticism that we're spending, outrageous amounts of money and just spending really doesn't hold true by this. 31 departments here are spending less now than they were in 2008. And of the others, there are places like the court that is only spending more because we charge them $500,000 of indirect costs. Nothing that they're doing with their operation. And then there's things like East Bay Township assessing, which is completely paid for by East Bay Township. So when you look at it, I would, quite frankly, I'm proud of the fact that out of 60 or out of 56 different agencies here, just on these raw numbers alone, 31 of them, more than half of them, are spending less now than they did in 2008. And I bet you if you went back to 2004 or 5, you'd see it's even greater than that.
Okay. Thank you, Judge.
All right, Judge, thanks for staying.
Did you want to say
coming and
anything?
joining?
Thank you very much.
All right, okay, cool.
So,
Take them up on that, go sit next to them.
Greg Brainerd, I'm the administrator with 13th Circuit Court Family Division, and I'll just take a couple seconds to echo what Judge was saying about how the courts are operating. We do a similar practice upstairs above him with a little different population, a little different twists and tweaks to it, but similar kind of work. The memo did catch our attention. If it was sent as a compliment to the board and the community, maybe we have to kind of rub our glasses a little bit and look at that as such and say, okay. It does raise some caution to say, is this a comparison to say the courts, the criminal justice system are spending a whole bunch of money? And I guess I'd default to Dean to help us out. I work with his office awfully regularly in ways that we look at how we can best manage the funds that we have that the community provides to us to do the services that we think can be most beneficial. And we've got programs similar to Judge Phillips down in District with juvenile drug court, juvenile mental health court. We're very active right now with a large group in the community looking at a program that's kind of been tabbed the baby court, and where we're working with families that have young babies that are getting removed from the parents for various reasons, and how can we work with that family system to not have to take over the parenting of that child, but give them the resources to do the parenting themselves. All these things obviously take money, you guys know that. So we're tickled to be a part of the process. Commissioner Wheelock will certainly listen to your comment about communication, and we'll be happy to come back and talk at any time, give you some more details of the numbers to reflect what we're doing with positions that we're not getting filled, we're not filling and still doing the work that we're trying to do, ways that we're going about trying to keep our lines down as well.
Understand the communications is two-way.
Oh, yeah.
It's not just you. We don't do it well either.
We can always improve as a team.
And this is another case where the budget shows an increase, and a big part of it is because of the indirect cost that's being charged for the new building. Same thing as district court.
And if I could add, the cost allocation plan, the indirect costs, there's a 2-year lag. I believe we moved into the Hall of Justice in 2006.
Correct.
Yeah.
So the 2008 budget did not include the actual indirect costs for the new building. Those costs, so therefore the 2008 budget was arbitrarily lower than it would have been had that included the indirect costs. And you wouldn't see for the probate court, the family court, juvenile division, and the district court anywhere near the differences that we've documented here. So there's a lot of details in the numbers that this analysis does not point out.
Greg, thank you very much.
Thank you.
I have a motion on the floor, am I correct? Is
Yeah.
there any other discussion on the motion?
Motion was the 2012 budget process.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. If I can just comment, I wanted to commend Chairman Inman and Administrator Loya for having the foresight to put something together ahead of time rather than just wait till the last minute and then throw it together like, you know, the norm. So, thank you. And I do like the revised edition much better. The definition of ad hoc is for a purpose. And the purpose of that ad hoc budget committee was this year's budget.
Right.
And so, in my opinion, even if it was the same exact people, it would be a new ad hoc committee if we did anything with that going forward. But it looks great. The only thing that is a little bit vague to me is prepare a public input survey ranking process.
That's perfect.
And maybe that's meant to be vague, but you can spend $1 on a survey, you can spend $20,000 on a survey.
Yeah.
Part of the budgeting.
I'd like to make two comments on this further. The public input process, remember, you decided not to go forward with budgeting for outcomes, so you can't compare this to what it could have been, okay? But what we're going to do is we're going to try to prepare for you a simple survey that would be on a general kind of issues. Prioritize, children's services. How important are they compared to something else? We're not going to make those decisions. We're going to bring you back a sample survey, and we're going to ask you to tweak it and make it what you want it to look like. Then all we're going to do is put it on the county website and get a notice out in the paper, no cost.
Radio.
And say to people, go to the website, fill out the survey, tell us what you think. It won't be perfect because it's not going to be scientifically done. It also won't be perfect because, we can't guarantee that one person, one vote. We can't guarantee that everyone who, likes to use a certain program won't get on and skew the results. It'll be a tool for you to use. So that day, we're going to bring you the survey. We're going to ask you to go ahead and tweak it the way you want it. Then we'll put it up on the website for people to come vote on. We'll bring it back to you a month and a half later and show you what results we had. In terms of the prioritization, what we're going to do is we're going to meet with the department heads in a week, and I hope the courts will make sure someone's there. We're going to identify, as with facilities in our other departments, we're going to identify, ask each department to identify their main programs under a set of criteria. We are not going to be able to cost them out in time, but we'll be able to identify the programs for you. And then we're going to put them all together, and we're going to give each of you all the county programs. We're going to give you a matrix that will have 4 quadrants in it, and we're going to ask you to just put those programs where you think they are. Top priority, second phase, second tier priority, third tier, lowest priority. We're going to accumulate all 9 of your results, and we're going to tabulate those results and present them to you and show you what your cumulative feeling on the importance of these various programs are. And then we're going to ask you if you have any advice or how you'd like us to use that as we go into the final 2 weeks to prepare the budget. That's the plan.
Okay, Chris?
Dennis, the Record Eagle has a poll on their website, and you cannot vote more than once from a computer.
I just haven't had a chance to talk to Don to see if you can vote more than once.
You can't.
I don't know.
No, just me personally.
You and Greg will be there all night long.
You tested that? I have to work through the details of that with Don, and so we'll get to that.
Because
And
I would like
said,
that to, I would really.
Yeah, that'd be a good control
Because
point.
I don't want somebody sitting
It
there
would be a
just
great
clicking.
control, I don't know if our system
right.
will allow for that.
So I'm going to move this discussion on, so
Yeah.
can I have a vote, please?
Yeah.
All those, pardon?
No,
All
I'm
those
sorry.
in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's carried. Next, we're going to talk about panic alarms. Danny, you want to talk about that? So we'll get Mike and Dan out of here.
Use demonstration of panic.
Andy
Yeah, we're all
Brown,
done
Director of
with the OA
Facilities for Grand Traverse County. And I brought the big gun with me because he takes all the difficult parts. Because this is a computer-based system that, the last memo that I sent out June 14th, I know that was just the other day, like yesterday. But anyway, if you've read through this, I won't read this aloud, but I'll just go over some of the fine points about it. Like I said, it's a computer-based duress alarm system. We met, Don and I, with this gentleman here, this Mr. Robert Lesarge, and he owns this company in Traverse City called Northern Tech Services. He was, I found him through Commissioner Lamco, and he seems to be a very knowledgeable guy. Wouldn't you agree with that?
Seemed to be.
Yeah. To the point where it's, to me, the cumulative cost, his cost estimate of $825. I'm going to go out and do some due diligence and get some other bids just to see how this will come out. But I am totally amazed at the low cost, actually, of this, of his software, actually. Because that's generally where the money is, right? It's in the software. But that's where I'm at the present time with this system.
So you had suggested, and we've been researching this, Danny spent a lot of time on this, you had suggested that there might be alternative systems that we can own and operate ourselves, and it seems that that's what we found. Danny brought this to me yesterday, and my only comment was, well, now we know they're out there. You know, I asked him to check with Commissioner Gilman because I know he works in associated fields or related fields, but my first comment to Danny was, well, now we've got to go out and get quotes and make sure that we're getting the best price that we can. And so that would be our next step. We just wanted to give you an update. That's our intention. I think Commissioner Gilman has offered to also get it out through some of his networks so that, you know, people would be aware of the bid, so we could see what kind of price we get.
Actually, Dennis, I was talking to Commissioner Henschel.
I'm sorry. I wondered why you looked so puzzled. I read the memo and I missed the name. I'm sorry, Commissioner Henschel. Commissioner Henschel's going to help us do that. All that stuff I said about Commissioner Gilman.
I do sell the stuff. I mean, I got a system for $150 with the panic alarm, you know, but it's not something that's probably as capable as this.
Well, the beauty of this is that anybody that has a computer can get on it.
And we would own the software.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
So that'd be our, I apologize. That would be our next step. We'll go ahead and bid that out, and we'll bring you back a recommendation.
I guess the only comment that I would make for $20 more, I'd do all wireless, because then if I decide I want to move it somewhere else, I don't have to screw with it. And we have more than enough wiring in this building already.
That's true.
But with the wireless, you also need the wireless you need a
receiver.
Right, the transmitter to go with that, though. The only thing I would say is, I mean, it does require that their computer be turned on. So, I mean, if they were walking into their counter in the morning and the computer's not on, you know, you can't just press the button. The computer has to be on with the software loaded. So it's just a matter of making sure that employees understand how the system works.
So every place that there's a duress alarm, there has to be a computer on with the software loaded?
Either that, or you can get this IP transmitter, which is a separate device, so that you can connect it, and it connects directly to the network. So it needs a network cable, but that could also send the signal.
But our idea here would be to run it through central dispatch and have central dispatch monitor it, which they've agreed to do.
Okay. And, I mean, another option that they have told us on here also is you don't actually need a button. I mean, it puts an icon on the desktop, and so you could have people that, I mean, especially if, I don't know if it was a, you know, probation officer who has a computer in front of them all the time, if they were comfortable with that, they could simply click the icon. There's no button or anything, it's just loading the software and making sure that, you know, they're comfortable with how it works.
If we want to skip the icon, we could just scream. Hope somebody comes.
That's what we've done in the past.
Downstate, they were supposed to ask, will it fit onto my
Oh, I know it will.
Your iPhone?
So this is information only right now?
Right now it is, and we're going to go out and get some
Okay.
bids.
Okay.
All right, thanks. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks, Don.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Gilman.
Danny, you might as well stay up there.
Yeah, where were you going?
Actually, the old stripes.
The next item up here is the custodial cleaning cutbacks. I've been in talking with Mike and Danny and Jan and Larry and Dennis, I guess we're all there at that meeting, talking about how can we look at whether or not we, first of all, whether or not we should contract out for services, but also my recommendation is that we might look at how do we cut back on services to our employees and have the employees be part of it, a part of this process. And so my suggestion is that we eliminate picking up trash and cleaning offices on a daily basis, that we pick up that everybody is responsible for picking up their own trash and putting it into a common recycling bin. One of the things I did find out is that we don't recycle very well here, especially in this building. In a couple of other buildings, we are doing a pretty decent job, but, could be doing a lot better. So to establish a point where on each floor or each wing that people could put in a recycling bin, and then most offices don't have enough trash on a daily basis to even make it worthwhile going in and out to be able to pick them up. I noticed that Mike made the comment that people would put their trash outside their door. You're still having to pick it up in multiple different locations, but if the trash only goes out once a week, then it's only going to be picked up once a week. So it's one of those issues that I have brought before you before about some of the things that my recommendation was to be able to reduce costs for cleaning. In this discussion, I must compliment Mike in his working through and making cuts within the custodial budget. He's done just a great job on dilution controls and paper products, and so I think it's great to see him. This is one of those things we caught doing it right. He ought to be recognized because he has done a great job in being able to reduce our costs and be able to do that. So I compliment you, Mike, on doing that. But I just feel that, first of all, I think we need to go out for bid. But if we're going to reduce services to our employees, we need to do that before we go out for bid. Because if you go out for bid with the reduced services, you're going to guarantee the cleaning contract is going to fail. Because everybody's going to complain because, well, you're not picking up my trash. Well, you're not cleaning my office on a daily basis. You're not doing this. I think it's one of those things we have to work our way into if we're going to do this, but I need consensus from the board to be able to make this happen. If you're not going to be willing to go out for bid and you're not willing to go into reducing some of these services, then we need to have that discussion today so that we can get them set up so they know which direction we're going to do. So the general populace of the public, especially in the public, in the private cleaning contracts, are all going out. Do not pick up trash in any offices, and you're only going to clean your offices once a week. You're going to do your common areas, you're going to do your general areas, your restrooms, and all those areas. You're going to do those depending upon your traffic. If you got a building that doesn't have any traffic in it, you only do it once a week. Because the restrooms, every time, on the average, restrooms are used 3 times a day per employee. In an office restroom, you want to be cleaning those every 75 times that those restrooms are being cleaned. That gives you an idea of what you're going to do. We have the number of employees that those restrooms have to be cleaned on a daily basis in all of our buildings. So you can't cut back on services for the buildings by going into a once or 2 days or 3 days a week. We are a 5-day-a-week operation, but I think we can reduce some of our the level of services that we are providing in some of our offices. Chris?
I think we should try this. We can always, if it doesn't work, we can always go back. Also, we do share this building with the city of Traverse City, and I think if we can reduce costs, the city would be appreciative as well.
And that was one of the discussions that Dennis was going to have a discussion with Ben Byfoss on it, and also working with our judges. This is a communication thing that maybe they can be part of. How do we reduce our cost? How do we reduce some of our overhead costs without reducing staff? And so, we spend 8 hours a day picking up trash in all the county offices buildings. You're not going to reduce it by 8 hours because you still have to pick up trash one way or another. But is it recycled trash? We have 8 bags of trash in this building every day and only 2 bags of recycling. We're a paper industry. It ought to be reversed. So that's what I'm looking for. Larry?
I guess clarification question, how it would kind of look. You would have like a recycling bucket on each floor that would be in a common area? Is that what you're thinking? And then the bags, they would just pick up and twist and not, they would carry those bags like downstairs to an area? You wouldn't have like trash sitting around at night
A
in the center, would
restroom,
you?
a coffee area, can
Huh?
all be, the trash can go into any one of those areas. You got to make it accessible and convenient, and I talked to,
Where would they, explain
in
to me
any
again?
coffee area, that they can put their garbage into it. So you'd have a container, they could be able to pick that up.
So the containers would be located?
In a coffee area?
A coffee area?
restroom.
But you would have like 30 bags, 40 bags piled up, wouldn't you?
Not necessarily, because not everybody's going to have garbage every day. You know, some people have their lunch at their desk, and so therefore, you know, the comment was made by somebody that they always put their garbage in somebody else's trash. Well, he got caught doing it once, but that's, you know. But, you know, so I think it's a system that you create to pick up your trash differently. It's a cultural change within your organization as to how you do it. First of all, you're going to promote that you're going to start recycling.
Yeah.
So you get people to commit to being able to
And I think
recycle
people are
all
used
their
to seeing the
trash.
recycling bins around, so.
Yeah. So the other thing is that the garbage that you would generate, you put into a container that's in a coffee area or into a restroom. Mike's comment was you just put it outside the door and he'll pick it up. So that's one of those issues that we could.
And they would be all done the same night?
Yeah, but and this is also one of those things, you can't say, we're going to start this on June 30th. You have to start the process and get people to go into it on a gradual basis, get them to buy in, get them to see the results of it, and then say, you know, on September 1st, then we're going to require everybody to start to do this. So Mike's staff has to come on board, all of our staffs have to come on board, and it starts to change that cultural part of how we pick up our trash. And once a week trash, or once a week cleaning in an office. You got some people who are, you know, quite messy. And you got a lot of people, though, throughout our organization that are not very messy at all. And so, you know, and Mike's staff knows who's got to have more service than others. But the other thing I thought was interesting is by cutting back on this, the contract that we have with the senior center can be canceled, and Mike's staff thinks that he can pick that up without any additional cost by doing these cutbacks. Go ahead, Rob.
Jason, your hand was up first. Do you want to go first?
Go ahead. Go ahead.
I really appreciate that, sir. Some of these things I really like, some of them I'm kind of skeptical on. You know, the vacuuming is kind of a no-brainer. You know, the dusting thing, we don't need to dust every day if there isn't dust collecting. The recycling, you know, what comes to mind is the New American Waste facility where they're diverting everything and sorting it. And if they're doing our waste, we could just tell them we want everything diverted through that system, and then everything's recycled, plastics and glass and paper. That saves you the extra bins and the extra pickups. And they don't charge extra for that.
Right.
One that I'm really skeptical of is the trash pickup. You mentioned 8 hours a day we spend picking up the trash. Well, first of all, you know, what do we figure per hour for some of our staff? And the time that it's going to take them to do something that, you know, do they already have that time built into their day? You know, the judge was saying how busy they were and how sometimes people, you know, their case doesn't get heard because they're so busy. You know, are we going to be cutting down services with our staff throughout? And I'm sure there's some that they wouldn't even notice it. There's some, well, they have to change their focus for a certain time every day. And so I question that. I question, believe it or not, some people do not know how to change a garbage. The bag falls down in, I'm sure you've seen it. You know, so I question what's going to be the cost of this shift? Because you're going to spend time training these people. You know, and if somebody just never empties their trash and it falls all over, you know, are you going to have a discipline issue with employees that you now have to deal with, and it creates, you know, more cost. So I really question the trash pickup thing. Although, you know, figuring out which office needs it and how often, you know, if you're getting a third of a bag every time you empty it, you're wasting some time. And I'd like to see that handled. So that's my concerns with it is.
Jason?
I'm glad you went first, actually.
Okay.
Because it brings up the, what's the procedure? How do you have them do it? Obviously, you can't have trash sitting for most of the day, so there's going to be a certain point in the day in which the employees are going to be able to drop off trash to the location.
End of the day.
Exactly, end of the day. So at 4:30, or typically a half an hour before.
No, when they leave.
No. What I'm saying is typically a half an hour before the end of the day, or at a particular predetermined time, you bring a bin up, you have it ready. It's, obviously a respectable looking bin, and they come and they drop it off and they walk out the door. It doesn't take them any extra time. They have bags in the bottom of their waste receptacles in the office that they can replace it with, and they're back up and running the next day.
Yeah, well, it's a training thing, and I asked Bob about this, and he said signage is a critical piece on this as to what you're going to do. You may have somebody that didn't pick it up the night before and want to pick it and drop it off the recycling during the daytime. Just when they want to go to the restroom or whatever. It's a system you're going to have to work through.
Who is Bob?
From Resource Recovery.
Oh, Bob Osterhout.
Yeah, Bob Osterhout.
And as far as American Waste, we have American Waste as our hauler. Now, curiosity, are we still working with temporaries for some of the work that's being done?
One.
We have one temporary right now, and reducing this load would probably eliminate the need for that extra temp right now.
Oh, not with the senior center. We're adding the senior center in July.
Yep.
But that comes from another line, that's another line item?
No.
It'll all
It's
come
our
out of the
employees that are going to do it.
Oh.
It was contracted with the city. The city is going to cancel that contract June 30th, and we made a determination that it would be better for us to try to handle that internally until we make a decision on the full issue of contracting custodial services during the budget, rather than to contract with this one agency now and then go out for bids 2 months later and then have a different agency be awarded the bid. We'd like to have one
But we
contract.
recover some of that money from the Commission on Aging though, right?
Yeah, we will.
Okay.
From the grant, but it'll be paid for the people that we have.
Gotcha.
We're not going to add extra people.
Got it.
Mr. Thomas.
I doubt if 2 months is going to be long enough for you to decide whether this cutback would be successful. I think it's going to take more time than that. But I think it's the way to go.
But I don't think the purpose of this is to determine whether or not we contract. I think the
No.
purpose of this is to reduce down the level of service so that if we do contract, we're contracting and bidding out a reduced level
Well,
of service, so it's apples to apples.
That's why I think it's going to take more than a couple of months.
Oh, sure, yeah.
You gotta be there doing it long enough to
Some
know
buildings,
what you're talking about.
some buildings will go very, very quickly, and other buildings will take a little bit longer. That's just the nature of the beast. But I just want you to know that major contracts are going out, AAA, Blue Cross Blue Shield, Myers, many companies out there are coming down and saying, we are reducing these services, and we're not going to pay for any more services for doing trash pickup. We're not going to clean your offices every day. We're not going to clean your desktops. We're not going to do all these things. That's going to be your responsibility. And because they are cutting back, they're cutting back on staff, and they're cutting back on services. So this, one of the things that brought this to mind was in our city-county government thing, some county in Minnesota went throughout their whole county and said, we're not picking up trash at individual offices. And I thought, why can't we do that here? Ross?
Yeah, I had some questions. How many hours of custodial time do we have right now per day?
7.5 hours.
Per employee.
7.5 hours times how many employees?
10.
10? Okay, and that accounts for vacation time, off time, and so forth? Okay. How many hours a day will these suggestions save?
Well, with the trash, it'll probably cut it in a third of the time. So if we spend 10 hours total trash pickup, it'll be about a third of that.
So you're saying you're going to be able to do how many county buildings are there?
9, 10?
9.
8, 9.
9.
We have
10 with senior.
custodians in it.
Okay, so you say you're going from 75 hours a day to 50 hours a day?
Well, we're not cutting back the amount of hours they work, because we can't do that, because we're contracted for 7.5. But what it will do, at least initially for us anyway, is they'll be able to have more time with carpet cleaning and floor care, because there are some waxable floors that need strip and wax, and we haven't had time to get to. Or carpet cleaning, like for instance in here, it's been probably about 6 months or so, and we probably need to come in here and clean it again. But it's, right now, it's hard to get to with what we're doing.
I mean, one of the complaints that I heard from the custodians last year, when we went through this whole process with, bidding it out and so forth, was that what was being bid out on specifically carpet cleaning was not nearly as thorough, coverage as what we were getting with county staff. I just wonder, if we really know that we're going to save money on this or not. I did have a couple points. I mean, some of these things look reasonable. I don't know if you can really leave it up to the employees to, for instance, clean their break rooms. Because what you're going to have there is you're going to have six or 10 people using a break room, and you might have 9 slobs and one person who, through a sense of responsibility, takes it over and cleans it, which is obviously totally unfair. I don't know if you really think that your employees are going to be, dusting their windowsills or their bookshelves. Ever, much less, yeah.
I think he's talking once a week.
Yeah, there are some areas, you do a high-low dusting, desktops, employee would be responsible for their own desktops.
No, it says here, office dusting of desks, windowsills, file cabinets, bookshelves, et cetera, will be the responsibility of the office staff.
Well, this was one of those things that was stuck in there that I didn't.
Well, the reason for that was that there's a lot of personal items they have on their bookshelves and on their windowsills that we don't want to be breaking. So that's why.
How often do we dust windowsills now?
Well, if they clear their windowsill, we'll dust it for them, basically. So when they say, I want it dusted, they'll clear it for us. And
so it's not real often then?
I got dust on my windowsill from the reconstruction a year and a half ago.
I'm just trying to figure out where the savings are going to come, that's all. Because frankly, cutting down the hours by a third sounds like a lot of savings, that's all.
Okay. Dick?
I make a motion that we implement the reduction in services as recommended.
Okay.
Support.
Have a second?
Get this over with.
I'll support.
Thank you.
Christine, do I have any other discussion?
Item 7.
Sonny?
The only comment that I'd make is, I think we should get a hold of our trash vendor and find out if there's any reason to have recyclables and trash containers. Because if they're going single source, and when that new facility is opened, there's no reason that we need to separate it.
Right.
Yeah, I agree.
And if we don't have to separate it, we're going to get a higher quality. American Waste claims that they could see up to 98% recyclables in that new MRF facility.
When is that going to be done?
Well, first we got to pass the amendment, then we have to get a license.
It's probably 3 to 6 months
It
away.
passed in Garfield last night.
Well, I was going to report to you in a few minutes that
I'll shush it.
15 of the 16 local units as of 8 o'clock this morning had passed the resolution supporting the American Waste facility. The only one that hasn't is Grant Township, and they don't meet until next Monday night at 6:30 or 7:30.
Rob?
Have we quantified anything with regards to this motion? We're talking about reducing services, how much is that going to save? But now we have to train, we have to buy signs to put up. Even if they're cheap ones, it's going to cost something. Have we quantified anything as far as dollar amounts?
We've quantified that we think the total cost for bins under the original plan was going to be minimally $1,694. Ideally, $3,011, according to Mike's estimates. We have not been able to quantify how much it's going to save in terms of man-hours, because that's kind of a nebulous thing until we actually get in there and start cleaning. and start picking up trash in one location, so. But what we'd planned to do was this. If, as we implement, the first priority is going to be to clean the senior center, because we're going to be taking that over in 2 weeks. And then from that point on, we'd be monitoring the staff usage and, laying off or reducing down staff as necessary once we've taken care of those areas that we've neglected. We'd get that up to speed first. But if there was still a resulting unused time, and we don't think there will be, we don't know, because we're going to be absorbing a whole new building, we would look at reductions in staff at that point.
So the total cost is $3,000?
That's what we could estimate, but based on your comment, which I think was a great one, we may not even need to do that. We're going to have to go back and investigate that now. If we don't have to separate,
Yeah, if you don't have to
this
sort
could be a lot
separate.
easier and could save considerable time.
Let American Waste pick it up.
Okay, but we don't have, how many man-hours are we going to talk in training? A few people have to learn how to put a trash bag in,
I really don't think there's going to be significant training.
Let's assume they're all smart.
I really don't think there'll be significant training, but
Okay.
I think you brought up a really good point, Commissioner. I think this will require some discipline. I think there will be people who will not be compliant. And there's going to be cost involved in that. It sounds silly, but I think there will be.
It's all going to be a joint effort by the custodial staff and all the employees for the county. And that's what's going to make this work. And if they can see how, that if we can reduce our costs enough that we don't have to lay off an employee in their departments or any of these other departments when we're doing these budget reductions, wouldn't that be great?
I just don't think that, I don't think employees make that connect.
And the other half of that was, do we have a dollar amount what this is going to save, even an estimate?
No.
No, not yet.
Okay, so we're just rolling the dice and hoping.
We're trying
We're going
something
the right
new.
direction.
Try something new and do it.
And remember, let me say that, I want to reiterate, the recommendations that the staff put together were as a result of the inquiry made by a commissioner. That's why we did this. In a sense, I asked Commissioner Lemko to look at this because I know he has experience in this, but this whole discussion tonight, in my opinion, has just been micromanaging the operation. We're talking about where we put trash cans. And to me, that just doesn't, that's not something, I would much rather have seen the board say, go cut $20,000 out of the custodial cost, Dennis, and figure out a way to do it. And then we would have figured out a way to do it. But I want this to be something that you're satisfied with. And so that's why we're having this discussion.
But
But
I appreciate that, and we're
Yeah.
talking about, changing the culture, and we haven't even gotten people to wear their name badges.
Right.
Right?
That's right.
But, last time this board rolled the dice, and that was regarding union concessions, it cost us $36,000 once someone actually did the math. So I really appreciate the work, but until I see some math, I'm not in favor of it, and I might be the only one.
Ross?
I'm going to vote against the motion, Dennis, probably pretty much because of what you said. I don't think we should be micromanaging to this level. I even made the suggestion to Dennis a couple months ago that, I was hoping that, Danny could find a way to absorb the senior center within the current custodial staff. And I think you came back to me a few weeks later and said, you don't think it could.
Now
Well,
without
now
cutting
obviously you
services.
can't. But the reason I don't want to vote for this is I don't want to put my stamp and say, yeah, I'm in favor of these specific things. I'm in favor of finding ways to do it more efficiently, but, I'm with you. Yeah, let's cut some money out and say, just go figure out how to do it.
And-
Do it without affecting the overall level. of
And in
service.
effect, I guess to follow through with that, by saying, I would suggest that instead of saying cut some money out, I would say make changes to figure out a way to take over the senior center and manage and clean the senior center, because that's a big addition that's going to require us to change some of this stuff.
About 2.5 hours a night.
Yeah.
But Larry?
Other than the trash pickup, there are some things that are positive, like, okay, we're going to clean offices once a week. We're only going to pick up trash once a week. We're going to do the general cleaning of the common areas twice a week. We're going to just fine-tune bathrooms nightly.
and that's it. Go with Rob's idea of consolidating the trash and the recycling and sending it over, and let them just worry about handling those items. And then I think you've got something that could be well-received from the staff and would make some kind of impact without exhausting any costs. And that's what I would rather see out of this motion rather than the one on the table.
I have a question for Dennis. Dennis, when we bid out custodial services, did we bid out those custodial services as they are now?
Yes. That's how we did it last time. I know there was some disagreement on the behalf of the custodial staff about that, but that's what we did last time. But that's why we think it's important, as Herb, our Commissioner Lemko suggested, that we go into, if we're going to bid, that we go into that process with a newly established cleaning process, so that we're bidding apples to apples.
But if we bid apples to apples last time,
Right.
and we had the opportunity to save, what, $250,000?
$50,000.
That was the first year. It
Yeah.
was a 3-year. It was
Right.
about $250,000, I think, over 3 years, wasn't it?
$50,000 a year for 3 years would be more like $150, but.
Boy, I didn't.
That was more than
but-
that, but anyway.
I think it was more than that, but hey, I've been wrong before.
So, go ahead.
I will not be voting for this.
My concern is that when you talk about whether or not this should be a decision by this commissioner, I think it's a policy change. And so I have to disagree with some of the comments that this is not really giving the administration, saying we're changing our policy, and we're a policy board. And so we've said, I'm suggesting that as a policy, that we start to change the way we provide services to our people that are employed by the county. That's what this is all about.
Per Dennis, save 20,000, I'll be voting no.
I'll call the question and I'll have a roll call, please.
Thank you.
Excuse me, could you just read the motion again?
The original motion is
Here's the recommendation.
to implement the reduction in services as presented.
That's like my green memo,
Okay,
6911.
Okay, so go ahead, roll call.
Commissioner Maxbauer?
No.
Inman?
No.
Henschel?
No.
Gilman?
No.
Wheelock?
No.
Thomas?
Yes, I'll be the motion.
Richardson?
No.
Lemko?
Yes. Okay,
Mr. Chairman? I would like to make a motion that we direct custodial and facility staff to absorb the senior center with no additional cost or manpower required by the county. Make whatever changes you need to do within your department to make that happen.
Support.
any other discussion? All right.
And that would be including, for example, cleaning offices weekly.
Make whatever changes
twice a week.
Asking employees to empty their own trash.
Whatever you got to do.
My point is, I am not a custodian. I don't know what they have to do to make it different. All I'm going to do is tell them they're responsible to make sure that that building is cleaned to an adequate public level, and they are responsible to make the change.
And that's fine with that definition.
Any other discussion? Rob?
Can you guys handle that?
Rock on.
All right. All those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion is carried.
Roll call.
Oh, excuse me. Sorry, I missed that.
Hockey game must be over.
Same damn thing you just turned
I
down.
know.
No, it's not. No, it's not.
In effect, that's what it'll be.
No,
Not necessarily.
people aren't necessarily picking up trash and taking it downstairs.
It's out of our hands what they do.
Go
Roll
ahead.
call.
Commissioner Inman?
Yes.
Henschel?
Yes, please.
Gilman?
Yes.
Wheelock?
Yes.
Thomas?
No.
Richardson?
Yes.
Maxbauer?
Yes.
Lemko?
Yes. Okay.
Thank you, guys.
Now,
Thanks
for talking trash.
the next
No,
thing
I
is...
do the trash talking.
They also are looking at going out for bid. Are you all comfortable to go out for bid? Always.
Could you be more specific?
Yes, be
That's
more
up-
specific.
You're giving Dennis the authority because he's the administrator and he can make that decision.
I've already started the process of putting the bids back together.
All right.
Yeah.
He just has to,
Absolutely
he just has to establish what they're going to do.
Yep.
Awesome. All right. Going back on the agenda, then, we're going back to the Finance Committee. Dean?
First item is our May trial balance for the general fund, and this is through May 31st. If you look at page 32, just a couple of quick comments. Our cash balances are lower than they were a month ago. That's not uncommon for this time of year. We've operated basically for 5 months with our cash balances from the end of the prior year, and we don't collect our main revenue source, the property tax revenue, until the end of this month or the first part of July. So those cash balances will look a lot better going into July than they do at this point. And we had also done some things with our debt. You'll see the prepaid rent, the 124 account, the building authority bond issue that we paid off to try to realize more interest earnings, as well as the long-term advance to East Bay Township. So those are two assets on our balance sheet, so to speak, that used some of our cash as well. But we're still in the black. We have $4 million in cash at the end of May, and we will need that to get through the month of June before the tax revenues start coming in. The next two pages then show revenue by source.
Excuse me, Dean.
I'm sorry, Dean.
Okay.
You know me, I'm going to have questions on this stuff. We paid off the health department bonds last month?
Correct. That was done in October of 2010.
But obviously, they're still paying rent to the building authority.
No, the health services debt issue has been paid in full. They do still pay rent to the county.
I guess that's my question. Who do they pay rent to, and what account does it end up in?
Are you asking in reference to the health department?
Yeah, it was just a question that came up.
We invoiced the health department based on a rental rate that this board establishes, and it's paid back to the county general fund. It's revenue.
So that goes to the general fund?
Correct.
And is that considered indirect cost then, the rent?
No,
or
no,
that's
it's
separate
a
item?
rent revenue, and it's accounted for in a rent.
All right, thank you, that's
item.
all.
On page 33, just real quick, and if you have questions, I'll be more than happy to answer them. But the first one, the taxes, the reduction this year compared to last year it's all due to the Michigan Tax Tribunal cases that we've had to settle on. So far, actually, to date, things have been kind of slow, but there's still a lot of value that's out there. I think if you tally up, Lori has a spreadsheet, Lori Spencer, the equalization director, we're in that $300,000 to $350,000 range of exposure if the tax tribunal would rule that all of those are granted. The charges for services revenue is down, but it's in line with the lower budget base that we have for 2011. And then I've explained the transfer in. That's a large favorable variance over a year ago, and that's primarily because we budgeted a higher amount to be transferred in from our tax revolving fund because of the revenues that fund has earned.
So is that $349,140? Was that budgeted at that amount?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
The full amount that we budgeted from the tax revolving funds to the general fund has been recognized in our year-to-date number at the end of May.
Well, I understand that, but that was the budgeted number from last fall.
Well, the total transfer from the tax revolving fund would be higher than that. I'm indicating the additional amount here.
So the additional amount was not budgeted?
Oh, it was budgeted.
It was budgeted, okay. So you say it's a positive variance, you mean it's more money than we took in last year, but it's not a positive variance to what was budgeted?
That is correct. It's a positive. It's an increase compared to a year ago. And On the expenditure side, the next page, page 34, most of the variances here, I've tried to explain the significant ones. For the transfer out, it's the timing of the indirect costs for both the district and circuit court. And the first four expenditure categories, legislative through public safety, even though we've explained what they are in the notes, some of that also is due to the fact that we did reduce the budget in 2011. Central Records, for example, has fewer staff this year than they did a year ago, and some of the general government functions are also down because of staff reduction. So everything is in line with budget, both revenues and expenditures through 5 months. Any questions? The next item then are the budget adjustments that I would ask your approval on.
Move for approval as presented.
Support by Inman and support by Thomas. Is there any discussion? Ross, do you have a question?
I just had a question on line, on page 37, the 279 line, the CDBG housing grant.
Block grants.
So this is a grant that just came in?
Correct. We've had it actually for a few months, but I don't budget the grant until there's expenditures. But
Okay.
it is a new grant.
And this is money that is going to the Traverse City Housing Commission to be administered, correct?
The grant administration component would ultimately go to the Housing Commission for the administration of the grant. The 43.
Well, that's right, because we hold the $200,000.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Any other? Go ahead.
Essentially, that 43.9 is the person who operates the Traverse City Housing Commission, or that's essentially salary for
No, it's just
management of that?
It's a percentage. Federal government allows you to charge a percentage of the grant off to administration.
Yeah.
So it goes into the administration hopper over there, and they use it as they wish, but for staff, et cetera.
We make an appropriation from the general fund also to support the position that's over there. So this is an addition to that.
And it's not the only addition.
That's correct.
We can talk about that later, Jim.
Yeah.
That is future discussion.
There's something you can agree on.
Creative accounting.
Well, didn't we do something in regards to this?
Is there any
We've
other,
had some discussion.
any other discussions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion's carried. Next is the child care fund.
We're seeing really good numbers through the end of May. We're still a little bit lagging in terms of the state ward charges, but this is a very preliminary projection based on what we've seen to date. On page 43, we're doing the analysis not only with the state budget, which is on a fiscal year of October 1 through September 30th, but also, more importantly, I like to track the county budget. And it would appear, if the trends that we're seeing now continue, we'll have a favorable variance here of about $130,000. And I will track this every month. In effect, what that would mean, if this holds true for the balance of the year, that we would not have to appropriate the amount that we have in the 2011 budget to the child care fund. But this is largely, this can change too. This can swing real quick, and I think it's primarily because, just the caseload and the children that they're seeing. There probably hasn't been a significant increase in either the neglect and abuse cases, or, we're seeing relatively low state ward chargebacks in comparison to what we have in the year.
Which, Greg, that's the most expensive component. So if we can get them into foster care or other care, it's less expensive. And the court does a good job.
And that's
2006,
Dennis.
we kept them all here, right? We didn't have a single, I think it was 2006, we did not have a single child taken outside of Grand Traverse County.
Yeah, good answer.
Well,
And it was,
and Dennis made a good point. I don't know if everybody heard that. They do a great job of managing. This analysis doesn't show any of that. I certainly can't speak to the children or the families that they're dealing, but they do a lot of work behind the scenes helping us stay on top of this budget. So,
Greg, one of those state wards, do you have just an estimate of how high it could go for a daily cost to house one of them?
$450.
Per
a
day.
day.
Per day.
And sometimes
You wanna
those
use
kids are in there for
365
months or even a year.
Could be, obviously we try and keep it out of that.
You should repeat that into the microphone because they can't hear him.
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, Greg, please, I'm sorry. I think it's important for the new commissioners to understand, I mean, there's a wide variety of things that they do, and Greg and the judge and the staff have done a great job of trying to focus in on these alternatives like foster care and
And
things.
some of the volunteer services that are available seem to be helping as well.
Combination of the whole
I mean,
program, certainly the volunteers play a big role in
Big
that. Yes, the prices for a state ward, Shawano Center right now is $400.
That's amazing. Last I heard it was $270.
We obviously try not to do.
It was $365 a couple years ago, so, yeah.
Work with that, and I can tell you, I believe we have 2 state wards as of the other day. We had 3, we pulled one out, got them back into community setting, and so we're watching that, obviously, very closely.
But there are times when you have no choice. They have to go there.
Correct.
And that's the volatility of this fund. You don't know.
I think the underlying thing was when Greg made the comment that he spends a lot of time with Dean.
They do.
They work very well together in making sure that these costs are allocated properly, because we get 50% reimbursed for child care fund for a lot of different programs.
Yeah.
And how do we take that fund and make sure that we get every dollar we're supposed to get back from the state?
Greg has done an excellent job when he puts that grant application together, and he's gotten fairly good at it in a short period of time. But this is one place where we do recover our indirect costs too. They do sometimes cap that amount, but we try to roll in everything that we can in the state grant, and Greg and his staff over there are always coming up with creative ways of doing that too, so.
It's unfortunate that sometimes we forget to kind of give credit enough for some of the things that our employees do, and we think about it when they come here. But I can remember the day that Greg took over this program, and the first time he came over to see Dean to put this budget together. You can't imagine, it's the most difficult budget of any of the budgets I think we do. And he's pretty much an expert in it now.
He's doing a great job.
So,
Thank you.
The only budget that's more difficult than this is the community mental health budget.
oh, I imagine that would be.
Okay, go ahead, Dean.
The next item on page 44 is it's procedural, but we do need to basically approve our millage rate, because the tax bills are going to go out here the end of the month. This is the form on page 45. It's the 2011 tax rate request form. It's prepared by the Equalization Department. The bottom line is the millage rate is unchanged from last year's rate. It's going to remain at 4.9838 mils. The equalization factor was 1. That's explained in here if you really want to go through this. But this does require the board chairman's signature and also the county clerk.
Move for
Need a
approval.
motion?
Mr. Chairman, I would move to authorize the millage rate at 4.9838 mils for the millage rate for 2011.
Support.
Support by Richardson. Any other discussion?
Nope.
I just had
Just
one-
because this is the first time I've been through this process, for sake of discussion, what if we don't approve it? Then you go to jail.
Then you go to zero income, then you
Take
go
me
to zero
away.
property taxes.
Well, we'd probably have to convene a special board meeting to discuss what that means. I really can't answer that question, but
We
you
don't have a
would-
choice is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
No, you don't have any choice.
Well, Ross, I think you were,
Yeah, Dean, the 5.1462 that's over there on the lower right-hand side, that's the maximum that we could legally levy? Is that, because that's 1.0326% more than the 4.9838.
If you don't follow the statutes, and there are requirements concerning truth in taxation, which was the old requirement, we've moved to the truth in budgeting language under the statutes. Without having that truth in budgeting hearing, which we roll into our budget process, the maximum amount You know, that's a good question. I think I'm going to stop there because I don't think I can.
I just wondered why it was there, mostly.
Yeah,
I had to fool around before I figured out that.
I'm not so sure.
If you took the 4.98 rate and multiplied it by that little 1.0 whatever number over there, that's how you got.
I hate to say this, but I
number
think
up
that
above.
might be a number that's an error on this form. I don't know.
Okay.
Generally, the way it works, without following the truth in budgeting requirements of the statute, you could not levy the 4.9838 mills. You would levy a smaller amount. And I don't know if that's if it should be a reduction, you know, the 4.98, that's a good question.
I think
don't know.
before, I'm going to ask Dean this, but my suggestion is, unless there's a problem with that, I'd like to get an explanation, a written explanation from Lori Spencer.
By 2
and
weeks
provide
from now.
that to you at your board meeting and
Thank
ask you
you.
not to take an action on this tonight, but rather take the action at the board meeting when you have the answer.
And the board meeting is on,
The 20.
No, I think, let's go ahead and.
Well, you're awful
Go ahead and act
close.
on the motion, but still,
You
I'd
don't
still like
have
the
time
question
to-
answered.
you're awful
like
close. You wouldn't have enough time. You're going to have local units that are preparing tax bills probably prior to
Yeah, we
that.
don't have time, you gotta pass.
Can we should get the answer on
It's
that
the same rate as
question.
last year.
Yeah, the same as last.
Jason?
All right, so this September 30th date doesn't mean anything then? I mean, this,
That's when you're gonna start collecting the taxes.
It says submitted on or before.
yeah, it says
September 30th.
submitted or, yeah, and the thing is, I mean, I'm not entertaining any fantasy we can do what Traverse City did.
I thought that's
But, but I think it's really important that as we're doing a budgeting process, it just seems logical that as we're doing the budgeting process, we have the ability to actually take a look at the taxes we levy. I
Yeah,
mean-
but this is for last year's
Oh,
budget.
this is,
You're only gonna levy what's on here.
Oh, this is,
You can't levy any more.
Oh,
than
this
that
is the most you
without
can by
having-
law, but you can lower it,
that's,
correct?
You can't levy more than this.
This is
That's-
the
I'm
maximum
not-
amount.
I'm not saying that I'd want to necessarily. I'm just,
I'm just telling you, you can't without a vote of the people.
You cannot go higher without.
can't go higher, that's
correct.
But can go lower?
But you can go lower.
Probably could.
And you know, I guess, like I say, you know, I mean, it would be good to have those discussions on or about the same time that we're going to have the end of the, at the end of the budget discussions anyway. All right, well.
Correct.
Could you read the motion, please?
The motion is to approve authorize the board chairman and county clerk to assign Form I-4029.
And is it inferred in that
That is right.
motion that that is the actual
Yeah.
one that's included in here?
4.9838 is the millage
Right.
rate for 2001.
Right.
I just wondered if we could include some wording in the motion to just, so that we know this is going to be, the numbers are correct, because there's some things, uncertainties.
Well, you have to
You
approve it
have
at the
the-
end of the month anyway.
Yeah, you have the month-end board meeting.
Okay, I'm going to call the question.
Yeah.
All those in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed,
Nay.
motion's carried. Oh,
Roll call.
roll call.
You didn't
excuse me.
satisfy me.
Tough guy.
Sorry.
Commissioner Henschel,
No, thank you.
Gilman,
Yes.
Wheelock,
Yes.
Thomas,
Yep.
Richardson,
Yes.
Max Bauer,
Yes.
Inman,
Yes.
Lemkool.
Yes.
So I just
Okay,
want, I
next is
want
the,
to, I want to clarify, I think it's important. This tax rate is for the 2011 taxes that will be collected this year. We used to collect the taxes before the year started. Now we collect it in the year. So,
Which is
Jason,
why-
what you're talking about is when you get into the budget this fall, if you decided as a board that you wanted to cut the tax rate, you would establish a budget at a lower level, establish a lower tax rate, which we would validate next year at this time. Okay?
Got it. Thank you.
And one other point of clarification, when the state moved most of the counties to a July 1st levy from December 1st, the reason it says September 30th, they have never updated their form.
Welcome to the state.
Well, they cut the staff and they have nobody left.
They had to cut the staff, there's no one to make the change.
Take the
They
trash out.
can't buy a bottle of liquid paper.
I think if you'd been listening to Lori, she'd have told you this has to have been passed this month.
Right. Yeah, you got it.
Okay, Dean, go ahead.
The next item, boy, I don't know, certainly don't want to step in it here by any means, but poor choice of words, but information has been requested on the septage fund, and what I've tried to do here was just give very concise financial information, and tried, Ways and Means last month, it was requested that I provide a comparison as well. So on page 46, that's what I've tried to do here, just summary information, revenues on the top, expenditures on the bottom, and then the cash balance, it's not the difference between the two, it's simply what the cash position was. And this is as of May 31st for the 3 years indicated. And when you look at this, you see that, the revenues with the loss of the special waste, which was primarily Bay Harbor, revenues are down, expenditures are, in a reasonable range, but our cash position has gotten worse. And when you look at the cash balance, which is supported by our typical trial balance or our accounting report on page 47, to put that in perspective, the cash balance should actually be about $676,000. When you add back in the bond proceeds that we haven't expended and the $428,000 and 820 cents that the county and the townships have put in. So, we're operating, not very well in terms of a cash position. The interest payments that were due at the end of April have been paid, but you have your large debt service payments at the end of October. And, it's obvious when you look at this that the revenues are not going to, generate enough cash to cover that debt service. So this situation in terms of cash and operating performance is it's there, and we still have to be concerned about it.
And for those of you who attend the Board of Public Works meetings, they focus in, it seems, on how revenues from primarily grease and septage and holding tank waste have shown incremental increase. That's where they focus. Things are up still. Now, the first part of the year, this year, they've been down. But this paints a completely different picture and a much more serious picture. And so I've asked that Dean and Bill do a financial presentation to the Board of Public Works at their meeting this month.
Oh, good.
And it's on the agenda for the 23rd, is it? I can't remember, that
Last
Monday. Last Monday. And they're going to go there and they're going to make their presentation on where we're at. And this ties in with, of course, those those townships who haven't paid yet. Some have paid, some have not paid. We need to get some kind of we need to get the county board and the Board of Public Works, I think, on the same page on this. And so if any of you are available, it would be good for you to come to that meeting.
When the time comes...
Jason, can you talk to the microphone, please?
When the time comes where the townships have to start digging into their other funds, which is apparently already happening. I mean, for example, it seems a couple months ago when Peninsula had to make a payment, they had to take it from somewhere else. I mean, how far can they go? And then at what point, what happens if they can't?
Well, I think that, I think we have their attention clearly, but we're going to have their attention to a much greater degree once however this works out and they expend that money from the settlement. Right now, some of them have made payments. I believe Garfield, Elmwood, and Peninsula have made their part of the payments to reimburse the county. East Bay and Acme have not. Okay, and they're wondering if we can wait till the money comes in from the collection and use that money.
No.
But in any event, I think the chairman would agree with this. As soon as that $750,000 is spent and they're digging in with no money to back it up, that's when we're, for sure then. That's the latest. We'll have their attention. But, I think they're looking at this, I just think, plus I think they're also, Commissioner Max Bauer was the one who kind of conveyed to me that in one meeting they were talking again about this authority possibility.
Yeah, I'll report on that.
Okay. And so, that could change the whole game. So I don't really know where they're at, but I think it's real important that they know where they're at financially. And that's why we'll bring them this at the end of the month.
I just want to let you know I had a personal conversation with the chairman of the Board of Public Works, Chuck Korn, and indicated to him there was some confusion among the 5 townships, whether they could use whether their funds need to be placed first within their general budget to cover the November 2010 payment, or they can use the settlement amount instead. The settlement amount has not been received yet by the Board of Public Works. The agreement in place that the 5 townships agreed to currently is that they would fund that amount up front, and then as money came in, especially the settlement, they would pay themselves back. All right, and then once the $725,000 or whatever, $750,000 is exhausted, then the then the primary source of the repayment would be the 50-50 plan between the county and the 5 townships. The 50-50 plan document has been prepared by Scott Howard, and it is out to the townships for their written consent. So that they are out there right now. So I asked Chuck Korn to please place on the agenda, and he agreed to do so, I hope, that the item be that item be discussed at the Board of Public Works in terms of clarifying the confusion about what the 5 townships will do and how they will do it, so it's consistent across the board. I did inform him of the financial information and sent it over to him, so he will be aware of that and make that presentation along with Dean and whomever at the Board of Public Works meeting, next Board of Public Works meeting. And that we conclude with an understanding between the 5 townships and the county board how this thing is going to move forward with level of consistency and agreement. Now, keeping in mind that the purpose behind the settlement amount and the 50-50 plan was to bridge us to the 2013 time where the big bond is callable. And the game plan, hopefully at that point in time, if interest rates are relatively close or similar, that we can re-amortize that bond back out to a term that hopefully we could repay ourselves back between the county and the townships if there is an outstanding loan balance, and re-amortize it to an extent where it's covering the operation expense for the bonds. So that at this point is the game plan. It's just bridging ourselves to the 2013 time.
Any other questions? Okay, Dean, I think your
last item, page 49, we bid out our central services. This is the indirect cost item. Our Title 4D applications and billing services, which are for both the friend of the court and the prosecuting attorney, and the related time sheet processing that goes along with that. Don Rogers and myself reviewed the proposals. We received 2. Al Snyder declined. He deferred to our review and judgment. We have been using the firm of Maximus for as long as I've been with the county. We bid it out periodically over the course of the 20 years, and they've always been either the low bid or the firm that we've contracted with. The other firm was MGT. They're relatively new to Michigan, but they do have the expertise and the qualifications. And one of the folks that used to work with Maximus is now back with MGT, and his name is Jim Olson, and obviously he's one of the reasons why we're recommending a 3-year contract with MGT. But if you look at the analysis on page 50, there's a cost savings to go with them as well. We're currently paying, we would realize a $4,200 savings from what we're currently paying for the services, and over the course of 3 years, an additional $7,800 versus what Maximus would charge. So we're recommending a 3-year contract be awarded to MGT for these services.
Ross?
I move we award a 3-year contract to MGT for Central Services Indirect Cost Allocation Plan, Title 40 Application and Billing Services, and Automated Time Log Processing Services.
Support.
Support by Wheelock. Any other discussion? All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's carried. Next on the agenda is new business.
None.
No new business. Next on the agenda is public comment. Seeing none. Commissioner reports. Sonny?
I mentioned it briefly earlier. I'm very proud to tell you that of the 16 local units of government, 15 of them have, as of this morning, passed resolutions in support of the solid waste planning amendment. The last local unit to vote will be Grant Township next Monday night. I don't anticipate any problem with being unanimous for this approval. I would also report to you that when the Solid Waste Planning Committee meets tomorrow, they will have drafts of all but the last section of the entire solid waste plan cover to cover. The only section that has not been rewritten in draft form at this point is the section that has to do with management and enforcement. That piece we're still working on, but if everything goes right, by the end of July, we will have the solid waste plan done and ready for the 90-day mandatory public comment process, which means we could theoretically have that back to the county board by November for approval.
Ross, you have anything?
No.
Chris?
Chuck Korn mentioned to the Garfield Board last night that the BPW and the townships are talking about moving ahead with an authority. And he mentioned that there was a special sewer and water meeting coming up that he wanted his board to attend. And but one of the items that he said was they had an informative meeting, and I didn't hear about this until last night, where someone presented to all the townships that they have all these different pressure districts. And it's costing them a great deal of extra money because everybody's basically doing their own thing. They're not working together as a team. And he did say that to his board that the townships really want to try to move this ahead within a year. So we'll see.
Jason?
The Peninsula Township Board last night, as I mentioned, they were working on their master plan. Aside from that, they voted down their contribution to the fireworks. And they also accepted a grant for $15,000 that they're going to have applied for a mile of Peninsula Drive road work. And other than that, some of the local township stuff.
Rob?
Well, there's still some patriots over in East Bay. They like the fireworks idea. So, with their contribution, we can get Chris Bizdak out there with a sparkler on 4th of July, maybe.
Okay, go ahead.
Not done. There was some discussion of the connecting of the water systems together, and something I wasn't really aware of. Kind of made a good point was that like East Bay's water is really hard, and they have an iron removal system. Well, in the event of a fire or a big burn, they will bypass that to increase the flow, and so everyone will have hard water for a couple days. And the issue with hooking to Traverse City was Traverse City is not okay in the event of an emergency of having that hard water in their system. So just some stuff that they're working out, but they are looking into working together with other municipalities.
There's a difference between water with iron in it and hard water, a big difference.
Larry?
Just to let you know that Dennis and I have had several conversations with Judge Powers, the Chief Circuit Court Judge, regarding the contract for Circuit Court. And if you will allow me, I would like to pass that update over to Dennis so he could report that to the board at this time.
We received a settlement signed by the judges for the Circuit Court Association, which includes the Circuit Court employees and the front of the court employees. And then the next day, we received a signed agreement between the Circuit Court supervisors, which is the administrator of the court, and the friend of the court, signed by the judges as well. And they had, they said, is it going to the county board? And my interpretation of that was they made the decision to do the negotiating, and they are the employer by law, and as such didn't require county board action. I asked Al Schneider about that, and Al sent me an email today saying he agreed, that he didn't think that that was the case. And then I met with Judge Powers, and I asked Judge Powers, why did you want this to come to the board if you're approving it? And his only thing was he wanted to make sure we were going to pay the increases, and I said, well, we have a letter in order from you. We will be following that order, we'll be moving that forward. So I wanted to give you an update on that. I don't see any reason why the county board needs to take action on it, or should, at this point in time.
And can you update them on the MERS rule about the county and the overall funding units?
The MERS rule with the defined benefit program, they're not eligible to switch under MERS rules to defined contribution, because there are two things that must take place. Both the unit, which is Circuit Court Association in this case, and the county as a whole must be funded at 80% of their funding limit in order to be able to change.
Close out a unit.
To close out a unit and change benefits. This makes absolutely no sense to me if you think about it. We're talking about a lesser benefit which will decrease our liability in the benefit program, but they won't let us change because we're not funded high enough. It just makes no sense.
So the
court really has no choice in this. We have no choice in this. We can't take away the defined benefit at this time.
Yeah, but just to let you know that the contract that they did submit mirrors the same terms and conditions
as everybody else,
as everyone else.
Yep.
Right. So we wanted to update everyone on that.
Richard, Mr. Thomas?
Last and not least, Green Lake and Blair both turned down the fireworks. And last night, the Record Eagle was famous. They were on the Jay Leno program. It's all over the headline that was in the paper last week that said they're planning to join sewer and water together.
There's real drinkable water right there. And this community's saving a lot of money. They're just going to mix them together.
Record Eagle, I said, well, it's about time I had some.
All the households are getting screenings now for their faucets.
Anything else?
Move to go into closed session.
No, I have two things. Garfield Township did approve $5,000 for the fireworks. So they did approve that. And they are also looking at cost sharing with the road commission for chip and sealing roads. They just didn't know how much it was going to be, how many miles, and who was paying when and what and how come. So they had some questions. So they'll come back on their board meeting in 2 weeks to determine whether or not they are. And apparently some of the other townships are also looking at cost sharing on chip and sealing, which is using the Paisley ratings of roads that are 5 and 6 to preserve those. So that just gives you an update on that. Okay, and then the announcements, you've got all that. Everybody understands that. I think the Board of Commissioners and Grand Terrace Band, that's August 24th. So everybody should put that in their calendar. And so next is to go into closed session for...
Chairman, I think you did, maybe I missed it. Did you do the second public comment?
Yes, I did.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Okay.
So,
Chris woke up at that.
So why do we need to go into closed session?
We're going into closed session to
Because
get an
Chris has been here
update
all
on
night.
our lawsuits, and the motion should read, going into closed session to discuss the Morden lawsuit versus Grand Traverse County and the Carlson lawsuit versus Grand Traverse County. This is our quarterly update.
So I have that motion by Gilman, support by Thomas. All those in favor, say aye.
No.
Oh, so I have to have a roll call. I have to have a roll call.
And Chris?
Caught that one.
Commissioner Gilman,
Yes.
Wheelock?
Yes, ma'am.
Thomas?
Yep.
Richardson?
Yes.
Max Bauer?
Yes.
Inman?
Yep.
Henschel?
Yes.
Limkul?
Yes.
And for those that are watching at home, there will be no action at the end of this.
Right.
And I will be contacting the NHL for next year so they don't have games on Wednesday night.
You voted for the night meetings.
fact that Bonnie sits here.
You just nudge her and say 5-minute break.
I move we come back from the
Closed session?
closed session. Support.
Support.
All in favor?
Aye.
That we came back?
Jason, you moved to my
Yeah,
closed
yep,
session,
yep.
and who supported it?
Larry.
Larry.
Larry supported it. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Aye.
Aye.
Good night.
You guys can't get faster than me.